Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the 2021 version of the online Musky Symposium. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to welcome you all and thank you at the same time. It seems like just the other day I was littering the internet and dropping little hints about what the show was and was going to be, and somehow time has flown by, and here we sit, ready for the show. So I hope this proves entertaining and educational, a little bit fun, and I hope nobody leaves here disappointed. For tonight's show, we got to begin with some thank yous. That's the best way to start this. When I came up with the idea of doing the online show, there were some very key people that I had to speak to, and in order to make this work, they had to be on board, and I was very, very fortunate, and I am very grateful that they were all with me on this project. The first person I want to thank is John Anderson. John Anderson from the Ottawa River Musky Factory is probably the most knowledgeable musky man I know. Definitely one of the most dedicated, hardworking, musky-oriented guides you'll ever find for the Ottawa River Musky Factory. And his wealth of knowledge, his contacts, his understanding of how to use money to do proper research and where it should go is invaluable to me. So when I approached John and I said, this is what I was thinking, he said, I'm thinking the exact same thing. I just needed somebody else to do it. And I'm happy to be John's errand boy on this project, but know that it was not just me. There was a lot of people working on this. Also from the Ottawa River Musky Factory, some of you are coming to know her well, is Lisa Goodyear. She puts in more time and effort behind the scenes for things like the Monday Night Musky seminars, for the past Odyssey 2 weeks ago, and now for the Symposium, than you will ever know. Lisa is also a full-time guide, trained under John Anderson, working for the Ottawa River Musky Factory, and she knows her stuff. She is dedicated just like everyone else at the Ottawa River Musky Factory. So thank you to her. Thank you to the whole team on that side. As far as I'm concerned, the show is sponsored by the Ottawa River Musky Factory. Next person to thank is got to be Dave Cormanios. I knew once I had this idea that I would need someone to draw everybody else in. And when I called Dave up, he took my call, which is nice enough right there, and he was instantly enthusiastic and supportive. He gave me unconditional support from the minute we talked. And that really told me that there was going to be air in the sail of this ship, something to push us forward. And I was able to use Dave on countless times to help raise even extra funds. He made baits available to us that he could sell for fantastic prices himself, and he let us use them at bargain rates and then make tons of money for research. But DK, as we know him, or Dave Cormanios, is salt of the earth and a good man, and I want to thank him for his support. I also need to thank Lydio. There is nobody in our musky community who donates more, gives freely of himself and his work than Lydio. Lydio cares about the fishery and will stop at nothing to help support it. And he was the other person who jumped on board right away, understood what I was trying to do and supported me. So all the bait builders are important. We had probably 46 or 47. A couple didn't make it all the way to the end. Timelines were tight. We didn't start this till mid-January, and the build season really begins back in November. Plus with COVID and other variables at play, we had to be understanding that there were limitations about what they could produce, and considering their other obligations as well. So I got to thank all the builders for supporting this project, for being involved. But Lydio and Dave Cormanios, they deserve a special thank you, because I needed someone to tell me this was going to work. I needed someone to be a lever to help others join in, and they were that. I guess the last bait builder I will throw a big thank you to is Hose. We all know him as the king of the Musky show, and when he jumped on board, I felt like we completed it. We had all the big people that were important in our industry, at least in Canada, and a few from the US, and we had a complete Musky show in terms of baits at that point. So thank you there. Another thank you that needs to go out is to the people helping behind the scenes here. Simon Dennis and Peter Hoffman, Fisher Pete Hoffman, as you may know him. I need someone to bounce ideas off. I needed someone to help me nurture this idea to help keep it grounded, steer it in the right direction. Those two gentlemen were that. Every time I had to think something through, even if I didn't listen, they were there to really guide me, and I appreciate their help. And then also in the background, as we move forward, once we start these draws, we've got Susan Sponga, I hope I didn't pronounce that too bad, and Dwayne J. Vigors. They're going to be helping with the picks. So we got Pete Hoffman, Simon Dennis, Susan Sponga, and Dwayne J. Vigors, all going to help us get through 750 musky lures that we have for sale at the symposium. And I guess the last two thank yous I have, one goes to Sean Ryan and Greg Bellinger. I needed some technical support when it comes to how to do advertising and things like that. I wish I had a picture to show you right now of what I drew as our symposium logo, and what Greg Bellinger did is astronomically over 10 different hills better than what I could ever achieve. So thank you to him. And then Sean Ryan was helping with all the advertising and those little memes and things like that. It was his efforts there that helped get us all excited and keep us going for the couple months it took to get to this date. Also, sorry, a big thank you to my wife, my mother-in-law, also my kids. I won't lie, this has been a time-consuming endeavor, and there were sacrifices that had to be made, and they helped make them. It was on their shoulders and backs, and some of the lists that have been made, a lot of the paperwork that was done, with their support or even by them completely. A lot of hours. So thank you to my family for letting me do this project. And I think that's everyone I had to thank right there. What we're going to do here over the next 2 days, over the next few hours, is we're going to see how science and musky research are bonded. That there's a pivotal role in nurturing the musky population, guiding policies, and teaching and understanding what muskies do, why they do it, and there's a relationship there, a correlation between the angler and the scientist. And I'm really hoping that by 2 p.m. tomorrow, we understand the value of the science behind musky research and guiding us and educating us. And of course, the scientists will appreciate just what we can do, especially when we give them $27,800 worth of stuff. The numbers are not final for what we raised. They're close. They're somewhere in that $27,000 to $28,000 range. That's all you guys. It's a huge financial contribution, whether you knew you were doing it or not. It was happening. And the cool part is we did this not based on donations. There were a few donations, people who just don't take no for an answer, guys like Frank Thurston, Frank DeMacantro from Frankie Bates. There was a few others. Matthew Chase from MC Lures donated a gift certificate. John Tard put in a specially redesigned Phantom Softail with BAT technology infused. And Greg Jones from Lila Lures, he was awesome and donated one of his jammers, which is very kind of him, all on the pretense that we should have some door prizes, and they were willing to step up and do it. But by and large, all the raffles that are done, all the baits that have been used, we've paid for them, some of them at a discounted rate, and then use them and your generosity and your desires for these high-end things to raise extra funds. So thank you to everyone who's watching, to everyone who's participated, to everyone who's shown me that this project really was worthwhile. John Anderson was the wind in the sails. You guys are what floats the boat, and you did a great job. So everybody should pat themselves on the back. One last thing about the money. If anybody has any questions about the financial aspect of this project, don't hesitate. Reach out to me. We'll open up the book, so to speak. I'll make sure everybody can see it, because it really is your money as much as it is mine, actually more so yours than mine. And I want to make sure we have a level of transparency second to none. The money will be gone very shortly. I'm working hard to get it away from my bank accounts and into the hands of the people who are going to use it best. Some of the cool stuff that we're going to do, rather than just send some of the money across the border to John Farrell, we are going to send some money, but we're going to purchase some of the equipment that he can use that actually will function on both sides of the water and be available to multiple different projects at different times. It's a great opportunity, and if we buy them direct, we really cut out a lot of paperwork and stuff. So we're just going to use the money, purchase these transponder readers. I don't have the technical terms with me. So that's one of the things we'll use our money for. And then we've already sent some over to Project Noble Beast at Carleton, and we'll send some to John Farrell out of Syracuse. I will make a post exactly how much goes where, and I will keep it updated, and you guys will know what you've done and what you've achieved that way. I am not by nature a God-fearing man. I hope no one judges me too hard for that. Don't get me wrong, I try to be a good human, and I aim for good karma. We have to if we're musky anglers. But as musky anglers, I feel like we need to pray sometimes. And I find the only times I really am praying are when I am musky fishing. So I thought it would be a good idea to kick off the festivities, if you will, with a prayer that I wrote. So, dear musky gods, whomever, wherever you may be, we ask that you give us strength and good health so that we may persevere through our task and on our long days. We ask that you keep our spots quiet and the winds favorable so that we can do our best. May our line never fray and may our leader never fail. And if you were kind enough to give us a fish this day, can you guide our netman so that we have a successful landing, and the person with the camera so that we get a quality picture? Otherwise, we won't have a good ride home. And if we are lucky to catch a muskie, please make sure that it swims off safe and strong. Thank you, and wishing yourself, myself, and everyone involved a healthy, productive, fun season. So with that, I think it's time to start having some fun here. At 7 o'clock, we are going to have our first speaker, Dr. Stephen Cooke. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. But the first thing I want to do is go ahead and try and figure out who gets the door prizes. So if everyone's ready, we're going to bring up a randomizer here on the screen. Thank you, Lisa. And we're going to figure out who gets the 4 prizes. Prize number 1 is a DK. It is a Suban, very cool orange and black pattern, and not fully donated from Dave. He would have. I insisted he didn't, and he listened to me, so thank you to him. But he sold it to us at a bargain rate, and I think it was good investment to help encourage people to join. The second is a Lila Lure Jammer. I don't know if you've seen the video of this. The shine, the professionalism, the clean lines and paint job. It's amazing. I gotta hand it to Greg. He makes a pretty remarkable bait. And again, he donated it. I insisted he don't do it, but he wouldn't listen. So thank you to him. And that'll be prize number 2. Number 3, John Tard. Everybody knows John Tard. And he's captaining the BAT Technology Pro Staff. And he took a Phantom Softail out of his own collection. Got it all ready for the season with the, all the knowledge he's gained from their research on that topic. And it's ready for someone here at the symposium. And then last, Matthew Chase was insistent that he do something. I tried to persuade him otherwise. So he, of course, went over my head to upper management. And we have a $50 gift card, which will get you, I believe, many of his bucktails are in that price range or less. So someone's going to come away with a nice prize there. Definitely a fish catching lure. Ask him for pictures. He'll prove it to you. So on the screen, you're going to see there are 509 entries. You're going to notice some discrepancy between this number and how many people are actually in our Facebook group. That's because some people have come and gone. Some things have changed. I've done my very, very best to keep a tally of who's paid, when they come in, all that information. I have a spreadsheet for it. I will tell you I probably have like 8 to 10 hours invested in that project, and I'm sure there's errors, and if I've made one and it affects you negatively, feel free to chastise me. I'll take it with on my shoulders, no problem. But I have done my best. I don't think you guys really want to see this whole list. It's going to get posted. I will make a post later on today and show it to you. So we're just going to go ahead and do this randomization because it takes a very long time to scroll through that. And I know there's other interests coming your way that I'm sure you want me to get to. So we'll roll the dice 3 times, and we end up with 7 rounds. At the end of the 7 rounds, there will be the top 4 people. First place is getting a DK. Second place is getting the Lila Jammer. Third place gets John Tard's Phantom, and fourth place gets Matthew Chase's gift card. Here we go. Good luck, everybody, and thank you so much for participating again. All right, round 1 would have been Brian Thiel, Tony Lasher, Buddy K9. Sounds like a dog's name. Blake Foreman, Buddy K9, Aaron Engelsman, Max Bowden, Andrew I, Hunt Foulfish, Jonathan Lamontagne, Michelle Renee, Sapetizer Bates, Eric Koopman, Richie Gore, Will Morris, Jack Wega, Ryan Trotter, Ken Johnson, Marlon Prince, John Knotts, and unfortunately for the runners-up, it's Nick Feisler, Ed Perkis, Dan Pulsinelli, and Tristan Tamila. And here we go for the 2021 door prizes. First, Andrew Shunk. Second, Tyler Wright. Third, Daniel Gaynor Jackman, my fishing partner. And fourth, Brian Weber. Congratulations. Again, I could scroll the whole list and show you all where you finished, but I don't think that's an efficient use of our time. So we will stop there with the randomizer. I will copy that, post it to the site, but I'll do that later on my own time during our first presentation, most likely. Okay, next, we had 42 vendors at the show, and I struggled for probably 10 days trying to figure out what the most fair and yet reasonable approach was to determine which baits were being looked at first. I don't think there's any question that in any fishing show, Sean Mayer, Hose Baits, is the king of the show. He sold out the 2019 Odyssey, I believe, in either 42 minutes or 46 minutes. I was first in line. I saw the horde of people run for it. I think it would have been more fun in 2020 with DK there to see who was going where. And I guess we'll see in 2022 where I go, because I will be first in line. I promise you that. Well, as much as a man can promise something of that nature. So what I resolved was this. The 2 largest lines are DK and Hose. I'm convinced that if there was a show in person, we would be running to those 2 primarily. I know there are other bait builders. Martin Custom Motors was actually the first bait purchase at the 2019 Odyssey. I know because I bought it. That one right there. And but I felt the best thing for everybody was if we did Hose and we did DK first. And that way, you know, if you're spending that money right off the hop, and that'll help maybe guide you as you go through the rest. After that, I had some instincts telling me who to go and where to go, but I realized that they were mine and mine alone, and they may not be shared. So the only thing I could think of as a good way to determine it would be make it random. So after we do DK and after we do Hose, we're going to go to randomizations. I was really trying to get the lists completed and then posted so they can be looked over. There were a couple issues that came up with the Mortimer name. So if I'm drawing this list and Mortimer comes up, then it's even random on my page, unfortunately. But if Mortimer Bates comes up, it'll happen tomorrow, no matter what. When I finish here, I'm going to go back in there. I know Darcy Cox and I think 4 others commented there was an issue. Either maybe I pasted the names wrong or there was an error somewhere. But I'm going to go ahead on good faith and assume that the rest of the lists are okay. And I will be up yet again all night trying to make sure that those lists are all posted so that all the draws that are done tomorrow will have at least been viewed by you guys first. And one last bit of housekeeping before we get to this. You've got 2 presenters today, 5 presenters tomorrow. Presenters have been asked to keep it to 45 minutes. I'm not going to kick anybody, but we'll lean on them pretty hard to keep it into that range. And then the time between the presenters is going to be time for me to do more randomizations to get the draws going. Feel free, if you're waiting for your turn in a particular table and it's somebody's turn, tag that person, let them know, hey, it's your turn to pick at this table. Nobody's obligated to pick. In most cases, it's one pick per person. So when your name comes up, you do not get to pick 2 baits. The only exception to that is the rover table. Just logically shipping a jig like that, it makes more sense to do 2. So first place in line gets to pick 2 jigs, second place 2, or you have the option of only picking 1. But other than that, every table, if your name comes first, you either pick or you don't. And if you pick 1 bait. Please be careful. Follow the instructions. You will get instructions from what I'm going to call the table master or the vendor manager, if you will, whichever title you want to give them. They have specific instructions where the money goes. None of it goes to the symposium, so please don't send your money for baits here. And keep a screenshot of your payment. It might be very helpful. And we're going to work really hard. Please be understanding. There are 748 or 752 baits. A couple last minute things came in. And doing a draw to buy 752 baits across 42 vendors with 5 people managing it is it's insanity. But that's okay. I've done sillier things in my life, and I'm grateful to have an A team of people to help me do it. If anybody else, wants to help out with these lists and moving names, you're more than welcome to let me know. So without further ado, let's start with Hose, the king of the lottery. So if Lisa can bring us back up to the randomizer, you're gonna have to bear with me a second here. I'm gonna do a new giveaway. I've been practicing trying to make this efficient, but I've also been doing 35 other things, so you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit. But always be drawn a bar. Guess I should have some music or something to help you through, or some funny stories. Maybe it would be good. And where do we go back to? Here, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. That won't happen the next time. Okay. There's not really a way for you guys to comment or save us at this point. I was pretty diligent with this one, I think. So fingers crossed nobody got missed. If you do, again, chastise me. There are 374 entries in this raffle. I will not show you the whole list. It will all be printed. You will know where you finished momentarily. There are 17 hose baits, if my memory serves me correct. And don't feel obligated. If you don't want the bait, feel free to pass. I'm fairly confident that someone will jump in line and take it. So without further ado, let's find out who gets a hose bait from the 2021 Symposium. Again, another thank you to Sean. Sean originally came at me with, I believe, 10 baits, got it to 12, and then brought it all the way up to 17. So when we get to the 11th round, that's going to determine the list. By scrambling it 11 times, that helps us achieve true randomness. If you just randomize a list once, there's electronic philosophy indicates that it could be impacted by persuasive variables through the atmosphere. So they say by randomizing the list more than once by a random number, that's how you achieve randomness. So that's why there's 11 rounds if you don't know that. So we're going to randomize it 11 times. I'll show you the first 17 just for fun. And then each time. Here we go. Good luck, guys, honestly. So, sorry. Musky guy. I'm not going to read all 17 names. Martin, do you need another hose? I guess not. You're in the first round. you've ever been in line for hose, it can be pretty exciting. Watching what's going on, waiting to see if you're going to get your chance, your bait. Maybe next year. I don't know. Again, I've been told that I should run this show again year after year. I can't think of that right now. I won't lie to anybody. I'm very tired at this point. And there will be in-person shows next year. So I don't know if the symposium will happen or how it will happen. But for next year, I'm going to try and convince Sean to let either Ryan Pickering or myself do a little tour of the hose shop and let you guys see what's in there. Only a select few get to go to the Secret Society of Hosers, Hose Fest as it's called, and I have been very fortunate to go. Don't tell my wife or my kids, it's better than Christmas. And there's so much history in that room, so many great stories, so many great people. And I would love to convince Hose to let you see that. This is actually Ryan Pickering's idea. I won't steal it from him, but I don't know if he wanted to make it about Hose Fest or just the history itself. But Colin, I wish you had ended up in third. Sorry, man. I know you were wishing you could line up proper like and be early and get your hose fixed. Okay, here it is, guys. And girl, sorry. Drew Shaheen, you get first pick. One of those Jordan Hose fatties is looking good. Michael Collison, Marner Canine, somebody's dog. Jasper Johnson, Paul Shepard Jr., Brandon Ryan, Ben Thornton, Jeremy Wolf, Luke Wong, Eric Koopman, Musky guy. You were in that first round and ended up in the last. There you go. Jerry Foreman, John Randers, Colton Carlson, Jason Rajan, Barbara Wetzel Martinelli, and then Nico Guido in last. We have some alternates of Matt Morrison, Brian Mathis, and Tanner Ritchie, and then Martin Custom Lures. I don't think we're going to need too many alternates on this one, but they will be there. I'd like to tell you can start going right now, but once the speaker starts speaking, I will come back and get these lists and put them, and then you guys can begin your picks. What's next? Next is going to be DK and Dave Cormanios. So if we want to just stick to the randomizations here, what time is it? 6:45. We should be good here. Let's do a new giveaway. To everyone who didn't get a DK, I'll see you bright and early in 2022 at Odyssey. There was one more thank you I meant to make. Once this is posted, I'll do it proper, because doing it while I'm doing this is not the right way to do that. You know, I'll do the thank you that I have in mind before I introduce Dr. Stephen Cooke. So we had 362 people in the line for Dave. Dave was really kind. 34 baits made available for us in the draw to buy, and some absolutely gorgeous ones. I'm sure you're aware DK has his own Facebook group. That Facebook group is probably the industry leader in fairness, equitable distribution. That it really speaks volumes about Dave, how he does things, how he treats people. He is one of the nicest people you will ever meet, and the way his Facebook group is run is a testament to his awesomeness. Unfortunately, he has to keep the numbers low, and it can take years just to get into the group, and then more years just to get a chance to purchase a bait. The good news is he's told us that he's ramping up production as much as he can, and so hopefully that translates into more baits in more people's hands as you go. But the fact that he gave us here 34 baits is pretty spectacular, because, like I said, there are guys who've been in that group for 2 years, 3 years. They still haven't got a bait. And it's amazing that I'm hoping that some of the people who are about to win are not in that group, because that's part of the idea of the shows, that we give an opportunity like that. So thanks again, Dave, for all you do for the whole community. I think on Dave's back alone, we raised almost $6,000 between the different lures he allowed us to use. And without further ado, let's find out who gets to pick. So again, 34 baits in this one. And there'll be alternates for people who pass, but I don't see that happening. Here we go. So we're ending up with 16 rounds. We're gonna go through these pretty quick. Begin the giveaway. All right, here we go. And next round. I'm actually hoping to knock off 6 or 8 draws. I'm not sure that's going to happen, which means we're going to have a lot of draws happening tomorrow. But I'll try to be quicker as we go. My idea for the randomizer is to use the bingo balls. That's why the bingo balls are on the screen. Whichever bingo ball comes out corresponds with a number on this piece of paper. And that's how we figure it out. Sorry, Mr. Pelkey. Wouldn't that have been nice? Oh, and my boat buddy was there too on that one. I like that round. Who wants to stop at round 5? Give me a thumbs up. Ah, it doesn't count. We're not on Facebook. Well, I guess we are, but I don't see it. I don't know if this is fun or not. I hope you guys are a little bit tense at home. We should put up, if we ever do a DK draw again, we should put up the picture of DK's big fish. I think it was a 56. I thought this puppy behind me was good, but another 6 inches would have certainly been fun. I'm not saying I caught that fish. Those lures in front of my face are not there by accident. But I do like this idea. If you're not interested in doing a full mount replica, find a buddy in a print shop. I am fortunate enough to have one. Have them print it. It's the exact size. The 50 and like a 16th long from the tip of the snout to the tail as printed, and roughly the same height as well. All right, Michael Katz, he was in. You guys should have seen how many times some of you entered this draw, by the way. There were, I think, 500 comments or something, but it was really fun to go through and almost like a competition to see how many times Rob was and Mo Hauser. Was it Hauser? I'm not sure which Mo it was. Oh, sorry, I'm going too far. Can't talk and do 2 things at once. Okay, this is the runner-up one. Sorry, Tony. All right, and last but certainly not least, here you go. Here's your winners, or your picking order, so to speak. Juan Simon, LePêcheur. Get over there and take a look at all those beautiful DKs and pick yourself one. Adam Hohen, you're next. Kurt Levine, third. Stan Eilers, Andrew Suspect, Chris Healy, Susan, awesome, good, I'm glad for you. Neil Weniger, another good man. Kurt, awesome, lots of good guys in here. Josh, Musky guy, I think that's 2 baits for you already. Sapitizer Baits, Bobby Nelson, Scott, Greg, Mark, Kevin, Brothers Prout, Jamie, Thomas, Jason, Mike, Harold, Hunt, Joe, David, Peter, Jim, Scott, Maddie, Frank, Thurston, Kyle, Alex, Lefkis gets last. If somebody passes, we got Chad, Steven, Brandon, and Dan. Okay. What time is it now? It's 6:53. I think we're going to stop there. I will try to find a way to be a little more efficient with the next ones. I don't see that being possible. It's going to take us some time to get through these. There are two things left to do here. The thank you I forgot at the beginning. There are certain people at Musky's Canada that were helping me in the background who were, very fair, very kind. Ryan Fagunda, Brian Mathis, Ryan Pickering. There are a few others, people who have saw the value in this project and were able to give me a little bit of boost and offer their services and make contacts and really did a good job participating. So I think I'd seen a couple of posts about, animosity, drama, anything like that. Make no mistake, Muskies Canada did an amazing job on what ended up being their Odyssey. I don't think I could have achieved what they did, and the amount of work that went into it was incredible. They did a great job. The Musky Symposium isn't in conflict in any way with that. It is simply something different. There are some red tape issues around some of the things we've done for the symposium, and it was just better to do it this way. So lucky you guys, you get two shows. I tried to make the shows different, tried to bring you some different presenters with some awesome ideas, and I do hope that I achieve that goal. In 6 minutes time, Dr. Cooke is going to begin his presentation. Now, I don't know him personally. I truthfully haven't spoken to him yet, but we will be speaking, I'm sure. So I think it's best that I do the introduction based on what John Anderson had to say, because John knows him, knows more about his work. I do know we are very lucky to have him here. I am grateful to have him here. He is not just a musky biologist. His research has been done around the world, is known around the world. He's pulled in all directions. So the fact that he took time to come to here to speak to us is a blessing, and I'm very grateful for it. And there are a few people out there who can give us more information, tell us more about where musky research is going and what needs to be done than he can. So before we get him on here, I'm just going to read a little thing. This is from John Anderson, and here we go. Dr. Cooke is one of the most well-respected fisheries scientists in his field, a prominent conservation science scholar, and a beloved mentor to dozens of students and early career researchers. With specializations in, among other things, fish telemetry and movement ecology, conservation physiology, a field he helped define, and interdisciplinary science, Dr. Cooke is an extremely well-cited author whose research transcends traditional science disciplines. Dr. Cooke strives to make his research impactful by making it relevant to a variety of groups, including anglers and policymakers. His accolades are too numerous to list here, but two notable awards include his induction as a Fellow of the American Fisheries Society and a Fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. Above all else, Dr. Cooke is a true family man and greatly enjoys fishing and with his 3 young boys. Although he is a dyed-in-the-wool bass angler, there is still time for us to convert him to Team Musky. So I would like to think he is available, and without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor off to Dr. Cooke. Thank you. It's to you, Dr. Cooke. Are you there?
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. I hope everyone else in the world can.
Excellent, excellent. And I can now see myself on the screen over there. And at some point we'll need to do I've got my screen share up. So at some point we'll need to, I assume Lisa's got the magic for bringing that over. Excellent. So let's start off with a huge thanks. Wow. This is an honor for me. I like to think that I serve you, that I serve society. Although I work in a university, much of our funding, much of our salary comes from the public purse. And, we try to work with partners, government partners, industry partners, NGO partners, to make good things happen to benefit our fish and fisheries and our fish populations. And so I'd like to thank Danny and John of the Ottawa River Musky Factory, Lisa, all the vendors who donated various lures and other goods for the festivities, and of course all of you who have put your hard-earned dollars forward, and for your time, spending your time with us tonight. So thanks a bunch. I'll just note that I'm a kickoff speaker this evening. There are more speakers coming at you over the next few days, so please do check them out. So what I'm going to do tonight is talk about science to inform freshwater fisheries management and conservation. So I'm going to go a little bit broader than just muskie. I need to do that for a few reasons. One, sometimes we use pike as models simply because they're plentiful. They're similar to muskie, and I don't want to pretend that they are musky, but we can catch more than 1 in 10,000 casts. And so that from otherwise it's pretty expensive for me to hire research assistants for the summer to get much done. So you're going to hear about pike, but you're also going to hear about other freshwater fish. So I'm going to pull upon a variety of stories. If you don't recognize what's in the background in that photo, that is Carleton University. That is where I'm fortunate to work. Haven't been there in quite a while, but that is where I work, and that is the Rideau River. And there are, I'd bet my right arm that there is a muskellunge somewhere in the foreground there. So this is musky territory. And so when I had the opportunity to move from UBC out in the West Coast to Carleton, the fact it was literally surrounded by water, that I could walk along the shore and see fish, was amazing and a huge draw to me. So it's absolutely phenomenal now that I get to work on these systems. So before we dig in here, and I'm going to take you on a bit of a tour of some of the interesting things that I think we've been doing over the last few years, I just want to stop and talk about partnerships for a minute. And this is what I'm sharing on the screen here is from a symposium that we held at Carleton University, done in collaboration with Muskies Canada, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry in Carleton, back about 5 or 6 years ago. And this is, I think, really, when I think about specialized muskie anglers and I think about all the good things that happen around muskie, it's because of partnerships. And what we're doing tonight is yet another example. This is a particularly creative example that we have tonight. If we think about muskellunge science and management in the Midwest, which is where I assume most of you are based, although I think I saw in the chat there that there's somebody joining us from Scotland. These were fish that were once subject to overharvest and declines, and now we've got a highly specialized fishery where in most regions release rates are darn close, if not exceeding 99%. And there's just not many other species where that's the case. The anglers that engage in muskie fishing are also very engaged in science, education, conservation initiatives. When we publish a paper on muskie science, my email starts to ding because people are requesting them. I don't get that when I publish a trout paper. I don't get that when I publish a bass paper. But muskie anglers really like reading about science and really becoming engaged. And there's lots of examples of long-standing partnerships between muskie anglers, between government, between academics, and so on. And here's just but a few of those initiatives. There's the angler diary programs, various wetland habitat restoration programs, and I use the word umbrella effect, and the word umbrella used in this context means that although many of you care a lot about muskie, everything you do for muskie benefits other fish. It benefits turtles. It benefits freshwater biodiversity. So even though you might be absolutely in love with muskie, and that's why you're going into wetlands and, you know, planting native vegetation and planting trees and so on, you are benefiting fish and other organisms well beyond muskie. There's the Clythrum projects, the efforts put forward to educating non-specialist anglers, and it goes on and on. And I think a great example tonight is funding research. So you are generating funds to support science. And to be clear, you are not supporting my salary. This does not go in my pocket. I'm paid by the province. This will support students. This will support hands-on science, training the next generation, and generating musky science to help with management and conservation. So why do we do these partnerships? And as I noted, this is, you know, when I think of partnerships, I always highlight muskie. I talked about partnerships in fisheries science in Australia a couple years ago at the Australian Society of Fish Biologists, and about a third of my talk was about what we do with muskie here in the Midwest, okay? This is unique the world over, all right? Just want to emphasize that. So we bring in multiple viewpoints into science and management. There's no single way to do anything. And the more voices, the more perspectives at the table, the better. This enables knowledge sharing. None of us claim to be experts. I might have spent more time reading books, but you spend more time in the water, and we both have a lot to bring to the table. That ensures relevancy. If I just hang out and, you know, and read textbooks and hang out in the ivory tower, the science I'm going to generate isn't going to be very useful to the fisheries managers or the anglers. This gets cooperation and buy-in. Okay, if we're generating science together, then you're more likely to use it, to have buy-in. It, of course, generates funding and other resources to support science and management, promotes meaningful stewardship, and enables one to make something happen that would otherwise not be possible. So at the end of the day, even though I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, I spent lots of time studying about fish and how fish work and how they interact with their environment. At the end of the day, conservation or sustainability is primarily not about biology, but about people and the choices they make. So here's a biologist telling you that it's about people. And I think that's something that we've really learned a lot over the last decade or so. Recreational fisheries are a perfect example of what we call a coupled social ecological system, where we depend on fish and fishing, some of us for livelihoods, some of it for food, for leisure, and we impact that environment. That environment feeds back and impacts us. It's really an interconnected system. And when we think about the ways in which human behavior can matter, you can think about the various social movements, such as refuse the straw, or, you know, the movement towards dolphin-friendly tuna, or science information or misinformation that we might see in the media. But I'm not going to talk too much more about people tonight. I'm going to talk about fish. I'm going to talk about things that I think would be of interest to you as muskie anglers and muskie advocates. So let's start off with this question. What does science tell us about catching fish? Okay, is there anything that we can learn from the science? Well, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this paper, Musky Lunacy, and then it asks the question, does the lunar cycle influence angler catch of muskellunge? So if you read the abstract for this paper, it says there's an effect, and there is. You know, there's a statistical effect where anglers fishing exclusively on peak lunar days catch more muskie than anglers fishing on random days. But what matters is the effect size. That's how big of a difference it is. The difference is 5%. Okay, I like to try and put things, you know, when I can in my favor, if I can sort of play the odds. But a 5% increase in your ability to hook up on a muskie on a full or new moon is not really a big difference. So frankly, if you've got time to get on the water, I wouldn't care whether it's a full new moon, a new moon, or no moon. I would get out there and try my hand at catching a muskie. One of the neatest studies that we've seen in the last few years has come out of Germany. And this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Robert Arlinghaus from Humboldt University. And he's a fishing nut. We've had him over here in Ontario a few times, fishing for pike and muskie. And that's a Baltic pike you see in the background. If all of you lived in Europe, you would be avid Baltic pike anglers instead of muskie anglers, I would guess. And they've got a couple cool lakes where they do a lot of research, where they study where the fish are using telemetry. They track the anglers, and they've done some experiments. In this one experiment, they studied 3,000 plus hours of fishing effort and looked at where fish were caught and what were the factors that influenced success. And the biggest predictors of catch were season and the habitat. So there were certain habitats that were better than others, and there were certain seasons that were better than others. But nothing like lunar phase or even angler expertise jumped down as important. So if you're in the right place at the right time, then that increases the likelihood of catching a large pike. And I would guess that that probably is the case for not just pike, but any fish. One of my ex-students, Robert Lennox, who's now in Norway, was really excited about fishing. He was super into science and super into fishing. And so he decided that he would review what we know about vulnerability to capture. So across all the science that's known, what does that tell us about how to catch fish? And at the end of the day, there were two take-home messages that came out of those 300 papers. And these are not earth-shattering, okay? First of all, hunger, if a fish is hungry, increases the probability that a fish will be vulnerable to capture. Duh. Okay, that's not exactly earth-shattering. And second here, that encounter is a necessary yet often insufficient condition for capture. So if your lure never goes anywhere near a muskie in a given evening, there's no way you're going to catch a muskie. If your lure goes near a muskie, then you have a chance to catch it. But just because it went near it doesn't mean you will, okay? So both, any of you should be sitting there scratching your head saying, my God, we pay scientists to do this. This is not what we were expecting. We were expecting to find that magic recipe, that secret to catching fish. And we failed. That is what we learned. We were able to create this fancy diagram, which shows all the ways theoretically that things like sensory physiology and life history and so on, metabolic rate should influence vulnerability to capture. But at the end of the day, it's really about being hungry and being in the same location where there's a lure or a bait to be attacked. All right, so I'm going to switch now. That was a quick round the world summary of what we know about catching fish with a bit of a musky slant to it. But what does science tell us about releasing fish? And let's start off with this study. This is where I developed my musky cred. Over a couple days in Illinois, I landed about 50 muskie. Unfortunately, the biggest one is pretty much what you see in that photograph. So I might have the numbers, but I certainly didn't have the size. So these were muskie that were stocked in experimental ponds, and we wanted to know whether or not hook type, when using live bait, so we were using little toughies as minnows, and we used a bait holder hook and a circle hook. And so circle hooks are purported as being a hook type that has the potential to reduce deep hooking and mortality. So we did the study, and what did we find? We found that in muskie, injuries seldom occurred, no matter whether you're using J hooks or circle hooks. We found that anatomical hooking location did not differ by hook type, and none of the fish in either hook type was hooked in the gullet or the eye. Ease of hook removal did not vary. And so essentially there was no mortality for juvenile muskie captured on either. There was a difference in hookup rate. So J hooks hooked up about 60% of the fish that hit. And we knew that because those were the only fish in the ponds. Well, we only got about a 34% hookup rate on circle hooks. What we don't know here's a great picture from Sean, is what about on adults? And Sean did a very little bit of work on circle hooks and fish of this size here in the Rideau in Ottawa, and maybe he'll share it, but we never got around to doing a full-on study. It just was something that we never got around to doing. So maybe that's a next iteration of Project Noble Beast. So you're going to hear from Dr. Sean Landsman tomorrow. All right. Something else we've done recently is ask about, what does it mean if we change up the hooks on lures? And so there's a typical, treble hooks on the top, what you usually find on lures when you buy them from the store. And you can now buy hooks these aren't just random hooks out of your tackle box. These are hooks that are designed for replacing treble hooks. And they're placed on that lure in the direction that makes sense when doing this kind of replacement. And we were also interested in barbed and barbless. So this is Alexandra Trahan, who did this work, and she did it on smallmouth, largemouth, and northern pike. So again, this isn't musky, but we'll pay attention in particular to northern pike. And so we'll look at hook removal as an endpoint here, assuming that it's better for the fish if you can get them off the hooks more quickly. And what you can see here is that overall hook removal times varied from, literally a second to over 300 seconds. And hook type did have a significant effect for all species. And you can see how things are ordered there. So first of all, no difference for musky, smallmouth, or largemouth. And what we saw was that it took longest to get the barbed treble hooks out. And then the next quickest after that would be the barbless trebles, then the barbed single, and the absolute easiest and fastest to get out, not surprisingly, were the single barbless. Okay, so something to think about, particularly if you're getting a lot of injuries, if you're having a tough time getting fish out, if you don't have a good pair of end cutter or cutting pliers, this is certainly a useful approach. Something else we've been working on lately is deeply hooked fish. So that happens, right? You're fishing, every once in a while you have that fish that's really deeply hooked. And there's all sorts of tools and strategies that are available to try and get those hooks out. And so here are some of them. And last summer, working with my boys, my crack research team, all under the age of 11, we did a study, or at least we started a study. And so my kids caught smallmouth bass. My kids are really good at deep hooking bass, being children, when fishing with live baits or jigs. And we stopped the study after we held these fish overnight. And for the fish that we removed the hook, we had only one of them survive. 17 of those fish died after we removed the hook, whereas the fish that were hooked in the jaw or had the line cut all survived, okay? I don't like killing bass. I don't like killing muskie. So we stopped the study. And I haven't done that before. I've never had to stop a study because what we were doing was so bad for the fish. So I think the title of this paper says it all. Hook disgorgers remove deep hooks but kill fish. A plea for cutting the line. So if you have a fish that is really deeply hooked, and I'm thinking about in the gullet, then I strongly encourage you to cut the line, get as close to it as you can with good cutters, but don't try and pull it out, because right where that hook point is, looking into the mouth of that bass, and I think that's actually a largemouth bass, by the way, but it shows off what I'm trying to demonstrate with the hook location there, even though this was a smallmouth study. Right under there is the heart. So when you start dorking around trying to get the hook out, you end up macerating the heart. And if I were to macerate your heart, you would bleed out. Same thing happens to the fish. All right, so sometimes fish do bleed. And a lot of folks have brought up this idea of, well, can pop be used? And I've seen this for a number of years. It's probably been around as an idea for a decade or two. John Anderson's been using it on the Ottawa River with some success on muskie. We decided to do a study with support from a bunch of different organizations to ask the question, does this work? Using a couple different beverages. You can see there we bought a soda stream, so we also carbonated lake water to see if that worked. We used gill color as a proxy for blood loss. So we looked at gill color beforehand, and then we compared it after. In this case, to standardize things, we used northern pike because we needed literally hundreds of them. And we used end cutting pliers to remove a standardized amount of gill tissue. So to be clear, that is how we simulated an injury. And I recognize that is not always representative of the kinds of injuries that you may be dealing with. For example, in the gullet. What did we find? We found that POP didn't provide any benefit, but it also didn't provide any harm. One of the things that we did notice was that when you poured the POP over the fish, they did stop bleeding temporarily. And that's because the fish went into a massive bradycardia, which is a fancy word for their heart stops. And that's what happens when you pour an acidic substance over the gills of fish. They essentially hold their breath. And so you put the fish back in a white cooler and you wouldn't see any blood. And then after about 20 seconds, there'd be a puff of red, like you see here, where there's a puff of red in the water. And then after 5 or 6 seconds, there'd be another puff and then another puff. And so as that heart rate started to get going again, the bleeding started. So it gave the illusion, at least in pike, that it stopped the bleeding. Could this still work? Absolutely. We did this study in one lake on one species of fish, and we did things in a very specific way. There are other ways to do them. So if you think it works, if this is something that you think it is benefiting your fish, go for it. But right now, the only science we have on it suggests that, at least for pike in the context I described, that it does not work. All right. There's more to talk about in terms of catch and release, and you may be familiar with Project Noble Beast that Sean Landsman did for his master's project back, oh my gosh, coming up on almost a decade ago. Sean now has his doctorate, and he's going to be talking about this tomorrow. Sean is also on the faculty at Carleton. We're very fortunate. So, the introduction sort of, praised me as a Musky researcher. I'm a poser compared to Sean, and Sean and I will be doing lots of fun collaborations over the coming decades as we work together. So I look forward to being a partner in crime with him moving forward. All right. One of the things I want to introduce you to, if you're not familiar with it, is the keep fish wet movement. And this grew out of, the cold water, gentle trout angler, but I think it really applies to muskie as well. When we try and message to anglers what to do to improve outcomes from fish, it needs to be simple. And I really like the keep fish wet message. And in fact, I'm one of their board members, I believe so much in this movement. And there's 3 simple principles, and there's scientific basis to all of them. 1 is minimize air exposure. 2 is reduce contact with dry surfaces. And 3 is to reduce handling so that you can get that fish back in the water and swimming away as quickly as possible. If you're going to drill down to the most simple things that you can do to benefit a fish that you're going to release, these are the 3 things. And I think when we interact with more novice anglers, this is the kind of information that we want to be sharing. All right. I'm going to transition now, and I'm going to go pretty high level and start talking about the status of freshwater fish around the world, okay? And the title at the top says it all. And I want to be clear here. I'm somebody that I try not to be dramatic, but the world's freshwater fishes are forgotten. They're doing very, very poorly these days. The World Wildlife Fund, with a bunch of partners, all the big NGOs, released a report a couple months ago, and it was damning and extremely scary. And, being in Canada, it's really easy to say, that can't be happening here. We have so much water, and I like to go fishing, and I still catch lots of fish. Well, in this recent Globe and Mail article with a couple of colleagues, we wrote about this. And again, the title says it all. Freshwater fish populations are failing and forgotten, even in Canada. And I wrote about this recently in Big Jim McLaughlin's Just Fishing magazine. And I want to be clear. Smallmouth bass, doing just fine. Northern pike, doing just fine. Okay. It is, it's the fish that you may not know the names of, but fish that are extremely important in food webs, fish that are food for the fish that we love so much. And so what needs their attention? Fish need all of our attention, not just the game fish, because we are going to really start to see those impacts on game fish. And at the core here, it's about habitat. And so I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on habitat, but I just want to show you the state of affairs in Canada. So this came out of a class that I led this fall. I had grad students summarize the state of freshwater biodiversity. So you can see there it's, amphibians, reptiles, and so on. But we're going to go to the far right. So those are fish in Canada. And so you can see of the proportion, so this is all the freshwater fish in Canada. So we've got a number of them that are extinct, a few that are extirpated, which is a fancy word for meaning they don't occur here anymore. Endangered means they're really screwed, and then it kind of works backwards from there. Threatened, less screwed. Special concern, we're starting to worry about them. Not at risk. So that's that sort of middle purple color there. The darker purple is data deficient, meaning we don't know. And then not available is somewhere between data deficient and, we couldn't find anything. So more than half of the fish are in that category that I'm not happy with, where their status is endangered, threatened, special concern, and so on. And that should be concern to all of us. So we can't pretend this is only happening on the other side of the world. What about megafish? So muskie are right on the edge of being a megafish. I know around here, they're certainly a megafish, but on a global basis, they aren't nearly as large as these examples that I've shown here. That's a freshwater stingray from the Mekong and a white sturgeon from British Columbia. And if you look at the state of freshwater megafauna over time, this is all calibrated back to 1970. So it's called the Living Planet Index. And so imagine in 1970, everything was pristine. Everything was amazing. Okay. Populations are down over 80% relative to those 1970 levels. Okay. And I'm worried we're going to start to see the same thing with fish like muskellunge, that next group of sort of, almost mega fish. Those top predators are fish that occupy unique niches. So something that I'm certainly concerned about, and I think should be concerning to you as well. So what are we doing about this? It's nice to sit around and complain and sort of sob about the state of affairs. Things are going in the wrong direction. You can see the current trajectory. It is heading down. What we need to do is fix this. We need to bend the curve upwards. You've heard about bending the curve in terms of dealing with COVID. We're trying to do the same thing here, but instead of bending the curve downwards, we want to bend the biodiversity curve upwards and recover biodiversity. So how do we do that? I was part of a team led by the WWF that created an emergency recovery plan. And there's 6 things that we need to do. And one of them I really want to focus on here for the last part of my talk. And it's called Protect and Restore Critical Habitats. And that's something I think that we can all be a part of and what we're here to talk about in many ways today. So why habitat? Well, habitat is the foundation for healthy and productive fish populations, okay? If it's crappy habitat, maybe the fish will survive, but they won't reproduce. And that's not what we want. We want natural, self-sustaining populations that are well managed, that are able to sustain themselves. And habitat is at the basis of that. And that's why we continue to study muskie habitat use and try and figure out what they need, what is optimal habitat for them, and what we can do to enhance or restore habitat. And so this is the kind of work we do to make that happen. So here's some of my team members out electrofishing on the Rideau River just downstream from Carleton. We implanted radio tags, and Kirsten Pankhurst, who is an undergrad student really into pike and muskie, he spent his summer on bike and skateboard tracking these fish along a reach of the Rideau River from Carleton all the way downstream to the Ottawa River. And here's the kind of data he generated. He did this year round, including in the winter, and we tracked muskie and pike. And so the pike are in black. We tracked more pike than muskie, and the muskie are in gray. And so you can kind of see where they were spread out over time. The 417 bridge, so downtown is at the top, and at the bottom is Hogsback. And so you can see a lot of fish sort of in that area downstream from and around Carleton near Bronson Bridge. And then where there's that elbow there, that's right where it widens out before it makes the turn by Brewers Park. So a fair number of fish hanging out there. So at the same time, there were a lot of discussions going on about, is there a lack of northern pike and muskie spawning habitat? And so that brought up more questions. So we tracked these animals during the reproductive period and identified not only when they spawn, but we identified some of those key spawning habitats. But the reason we did this was to inform the Brewer Pond Restoration Project. So this is used to be an old swimming hole. It was sort of abandoned in that sense and was sort of filled in. But before it was a swimming hole, this would have been a more natural wetland type environment. So there was interest in naturalizing this. So a whole bunch of partners came together to work towards increasing the connectivity. So these large culverts were put in to create an opportunity for fish and other organisms to move freely between the river and the ponds. And so the pond is now connected. You can go check it out. You can walk around there. But we ended up collecting some video footage. So I'm just going to play the video footage. I think it's about 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And you'll see some of the fish, including muskie, as well as other organisms that are now using this system. That in the foreground was, and right there, that's a log perch. That is not a muskie, but there is a muskie. That was not a juvenile muskie. And so under there, so this camera is positioned on top of the culvert. And so there's the muskie checking out the culvert. And there is the log perch making a good decision and swimming the other way. There we've got a snapping turtle. Big old snapping turtle. They can grow to be about 80 years of age. Painted turtle. And everybody loves a beaver, being Canadian. So yeah, so oh, and a smallmouth bass chasing the beaver. So and there's another 2 muskie. So cool. Again, right at the entrance of that that culvert. So I'm going to stop there. But that's an example of what we believe to be a success story. It's still early days. After you restore habitat, it takes a while for it to naturalize, for fish to figure out what it is, and it's there. But certainly the fish community in there is changed. And now if fish end up there in the spring, which oftentimes happens in flood conditions, they have a way to get out, and their babies have a way to get out. So we've improved connectivity. We also do work on juveniles. Some of that work was done in partnership with John Farrell and his team down in Syracuse, working at the Thousand Islands Biological Station. And so there we did work on juvenile pike and muskie in the St. Lawrence River using really tiny tags. And those tags, you can see in the picture there. I didn't provide anything for context, but they are about the size of a big piece of rice, a big piece of basmati rice. So they are tiny. These are tiny tags that last, about 90 days or so, the ones we were using here. And so we were looking at, in particular, fall and winter habitat use in various nursery bays. This is work done by Sarah Walton, who's in that image there for her master's. And so here's just one of the bays. And so the fish was tagged in there. All of the yellow pins, that's where we had receivers. And what we saw basically between September and November is the fish just sort of moving from the back to the front of the bay. And on occasion, around November 5th, November 8th, spent a couple days doing these sort of short forays into that deeper area off in front of the bay, still, about 20 feet deep. Whereas in the earlier period, September to early November, it was more 3 to 4 feet deep. And then they disappeared. They dropped off the array November 8th. And that was a pattern we saw pretty uniformly across the system. So where these fish use these habitats, and then a mystery after that. There's still more work to be done. And these were the kinds of maps that we were able to generate. So for October, November, and December, going across from left to right. And then we had 3 bays, Rose, Flynn, and Buck, and we were able to do this on both species. We're able to identify these areas of habitat use. And so that's useful for informing where we try to restore habitat or where we try to enhance habitat. Where are they hanging out? Where are they not hanging out, and what's different between that and the areas where they are hanging out, and how can we exploit that knowledge to enhance habitat? Jordana Bergman has been tagging juvenile and adult pike and muskie in the Echolands reach of the Rideau Canal. She's been out there over the last few days tending her receivers, and we'll be doing some tagging very soon. I'm not going to tell you any more about that because she is also speaking tomorrow. But I thought I'd, as I wrap up here, end with this. You may not know, but it's actually the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, started this year. This is a big deal, okay? 10 years, everybody around the world trying to work together on this. And so I think this would be a really interesting opportunity for focus for some of the muskie clubs and organizations, really trying to make a big splash in the coming years in this space. I don't want to pretend it's easy. In fact, I've written a paper where we criticize this concept, that we have a long way to go to really realize the promise of a decade of ecosystem restoration. Ecosystem restoration is still in its early days, and a lot of it is about guessing, and we need better science to make sure that what we are doing and what we're calling restoration actually benefits fish populations and fisheries. So there's a lot of work to be done there. What's fortunate for us is there's so many local restoration efforts where we can study this, where we can assess this. And again, this would not have happened if it wasn't for partnerships. So here's just a few examples. There's one at Carleton University. It's that bay off to the right. So it looks, as you just halfway downstream between the train bridge and the bottom right corner, there's a little bay there. That was created and enhanced. I know Muskies Canada was involved and others. Like I said, it was before my time in Ottawa, but we routinely capture juvenile fish of all species in and around those habitats. In the bottom right is the Chapman Mills habitat restoration work that was done there, creating opportunities for the public to engage through boardwalks and displays, but also creating some amazing muskie habitat for reproduction. And then the bottom left is one of the most recent studies, and this is restoration actions. This is work done by Jen Lamoureux and the team at the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and she's been involved in all of these projects, actually. And here they're working on the Jock River, so creating some embayments, increasing potential spawning habitat as well as nursery habitat for early life stages. So we're so very fortunate to have this kind of work happening right here, and it's happening here because there's people that are asking for it, people demanding it, and people volunteering their time to make it happen. So keep up the good work. I feel confident in the future of muskie and freshwater fish, knowing we have engaged folks like you working on behalf of the fish and working together. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate all of you. I really appreciate the organizers, and I look forward to seeing you on the water. Comments there, and I'll get to them afterwards. You're welcome to email me or ping me on Twitter and or Facebook. Thanks so much.
Dr. Cooke, huge thank you on behalf of myself, everybody involved with the symposium, and all the viewers. I feel like you're a genuine steward of our waterways, and what I loved about your presentation, what I love to see is that you guys are actively out there doing things. It's not just paperwork and things like that. You're every chance you can, your feet are wet, your hands are dirty, and work is getting done. So that's really encouraging when you're trying to raise money. It's good to know that when you put it in somebody's research pot, that it's going to translate into a physical representation. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you. And we're incredibly grateful. I'm holding up a check from Danny. So grateful. This will get deposited at Carleton. I promise you that.
I need it out of my bank account sooner than later.
I'll make it happen.
You're a good man. There'll be a second check coming. I'm going to iron out all those details. But
Amazing.
remember, that's not from me. That's strictly from the people and the bait builders and everyone
So
involved in
grateful.
the project.
Thank you.
So there'll be more, and it's so awesome to see what you can do with it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get back to finding out who gets what bait. One of the best parts of any fishing show, of course. So for the next bait builders, we're going to try something. If this doesn't work well, we've got a plan B. But for plan A, I've got a list beside me of 42 different bait builders, except we've already taken care of DK and hose. And that leaves 40 left. So we are going to draw bingo balls one at a time, and that's going to determine who gets which bait builder we do next. Okay, so here we go. And forward. All right, and number 36, if that matters to anybody. And 36 on my list is Wiki Baits. All right, these are East Coast baits. I'm impressed both by the craftsmanship and the detail. He's fairly new, but you know what? I'm on the wrong computer. Ryan Wickholm priced these baits very awesome, and I think we're very fortunate to get a few of them here. He was not able to get a ton, but he did an awesome job. So thank you, Ryan. And here we go. All right. The hose and the DK list have been posted, so we are good to go for picking over there if that's where you belong. And let's knock this out. Wiki Baits. Here's the list. We're not going to show the list. We're just going to speed this process up and roll the dice. 6 rounds. Okay. This is available. If for some reason you have a particular interest in knowing which order things happened, you're more than welcome to message me. This is a registered account, so you can go ahead and review each and every round. All the power to you if that interests you, but it doesn't do it for me. All right, and our final is, here we go, Dave Pereira, Dave Comanius, Brandon, Dave Roach, Jim, Brandon, Stanley instead, and I think there were 10 in this one. I'm fairly confident, but of course the whole list will be posted. And I'm not going to bother showing you the whole thing because I'm confident that there was 10 of them. All right, here we go. Next up, back to the bingo roller cam here. And ball number 2 is number, focus, 9, whatever that means. I'm sure you can't see that. Have faith in me. It's the number 9, I promise you. And number 9 on the list is BL Baits, Bailey Lambert. These baits are deceiving. When you just see pictures of them, they still look great. Great paint jobs. You can tell he builds a bait that's meant to bump around the shield. But when you actually have the bait in your hand is the point where you realize that it's a very different profile than most of the other baits you have. And it's hard for newer builders to produce something that is unique. Bailey has done that and done it well. There we go, sorry. Here we go. I think I just figured out why the Mortimer list is broken, but I will deal with that later. Sorry. Here we go. All right. Let's go to here and new giveaway. I'll get faster. Don't worry, guys. Hang with me. It's fun, right? You got nothing else to do. It's windy. It's all crazy windy outside there right now. BL baits. Time is 7:41. We got some extra time here. We're gonna get through a couple of these, which is great. Brent Bochek is on standby. He's gonna do a presentation for us, and he's promised that it's a little more advanced, which is nice. I gotta say thank you to him for making something special for us. 4, 5, 6, 9. Here we go. Yes, I just had to count to 9. I've slept 10 hours in 4 days, so I'm not going to go through the list. We're just going to get to it. And then final round. There we go. And I will get these posted and the picks can begin shortly. All right. You ready to find another one? Here we go. Third one of the day. Number 38. I don't think you even really need to see this, dude. Can't see it. This is pointless. I'm wasting your time. Anyways, you're going to have to trust me the rest of the way. I'm not going to waste your time anymore. Number 38 on the list is Mr. Musky. I think I mentioned in his post, Bill Craig has been fishing twice as long as I've been alive almost. Well, not quite, but it's a bit of an exaggeration, but longer than I've been alive. He definitely has a certificate that tells you that he has the world record, and I don't know anybody else who has that. I've personally fished with the man. He is a good soul and a great adventurer, and he's not done yet. He's still convinced that that 70-pounder is out there, and if you want to be part of the chase, don't hesitate. Go join him. I've also never met a guy that tells you if you fail to catch a fish with him, he gets you a second day for half price, which is a very unique offer. The baits he makes, they are a little bit unique as well too, which is cool. They're made of maple, which is a hardwood, and so they are screw-eye, but there's not a chance that a fish will ever pull out because, again, Bill's MO is to chase the big ones. He's not interested in small fish. He wants a new, bigger record. And so when he builds his baits, he builds it that way. And they don't have a varnish or a clear coat finish intentionally because, like the reef hogs and whatnot, they work better the wetter they get. So 9 rounds again. But think for a lot of his jerk baits, just think of description. No, I'm sorry. Think of a reef hog on steroids. And he guides on the Ottawa River, if that matters to you. I believe he's further north substantially than the Ottawa River Musky Factory. I think the Ottawa River Musky Factory is like south of Ottawa by a fair bit, maybe closer to Cornwall, but don't quote me on that, please. I fish with John Anderson this coming October, though, so I'll give you exact details after that, maybe. All right. And then here is your list for Bill. I think Bill had around 31 baits. He's one of these builders that's not hard to get a bait from. Maybe a little harder right now because George Eunice is had a bit of an injury or a surgery and is recovering. But nonetheless, that'll be the picking order, and I will get that posted for you. What are we? Still 7:45. Here we go. Next one. And our fourth for today is number 34. All right, number 34. I showed the wrong camera, Lisa. That was my bad. Number 34 is Waterwolf. Mike Nabulsi is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. A professional, quality bait maker. If I was stranded on an island and I needed one crankbait, and only one crankbait to catch a muskie, and I couldn't use a bucktail, then I would have a water wolf shadzilla in my possession. He told me right from the get-go that making baits for the show was impossible, and so he had to regretfully pass, and I could appreciate that. But he called me back and said, I want to do something. He made a solid effort even still to try to get some baits for us, and then it couldn't be done. So he's essentially giving 20% off to a handful of people. And I don't know about you, it's incredibly easy to spend $100 on water wolf lures. So this lineup is long. The prizes are short. But enjoy your shopping spree to whomever wins these ones. All right, and water wolf. Here we go. 13. Okay, round 1. Round 2. Round 3. If you guys get sick of staring at me, 4 disappeared, doesn't really matter. I can like get my dog to come up or something like that. I feel like you're gonna have to see a lot of me for the next 2 days. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a very special water wolf one, there's one about 30 feet up in a tree on pigeon. You can ask my good buddy Daniel, certified gainer, about that if you want. It's a good story. All right, here we go. Congratulations, Colton, Glenn, Ryan, and Justin. If you guys choose to pass, it'll move down the list. You guys have first shot at $120 worth of mic stuff for $100. And keep in mind, everybody, you're not obligated to make a purchase. You're welcome to pass. Don't feel compelled. And you'll receive payment instructions from your draw master. And yeah, that's it. Okay, we're going to go back to the bingo roller and pick another one here. All right, getting harder to get these out. Number 33. All right, number 33 is Ravenous Lures. Another one of these baits that is definitely a product of an artist. Marty's also a tattoo artist, and his baits have that same poise that his tattoos do. It's very cool. He worked very, very hard despite moving and a bunch of other variables in life to produce some lures for us. So thank you. I think we only get 7 of them or so. And the price is definitely right too, which is cool. So thank you to Marty for participating. And as soon as life doesn't have Marty on a busy highway, I want him to draw up a nice logo for himself, because I really felt I did him no justice here. A bunch of the logos I tried to make, and again, I'm not technologically savvy in any way. If you need a logo, Greg Bellinger's your man. He's awesome with that. So first-hand experience. All right, we got 105 people trying to get, I believe, 5 baits or 7 baits. It's 9 rounds. So, all right. And round 2. Maybe in future years we could do like a epic game of rock, paper, scissors or something to determine who picks first. But for now, we're going to stick to the boring old randomizer. Okay, here we go. Craig Battle, Melissa, Brady, Kevin, Hunt Foulfish, Ed Ball, Buddy Canine. I don't think you need to see the rest of the list. Okay, we're 7:51. We're knocking these out of the park now, guys. Again, I'll go back and get these all posted to the actual post in a few minutes. And at that point, you guys can begin picking. There we go. Bingo roller. Next up, number 31. Number 31 is Beaver Baits. Tony Gazoo. Another one of these guys who's been building baits and fishing musky longer than most of us have been alive. He's a good man with who put in a solid effort. He got into this symposium a little bit later than the other builders. Worked his butt off to produce some stuff for us, and his packages are up there, and his heart is there for sure. You can tell when he makes a bait, he means it. I think he might even be giving baits away for free potentially, so take a look at what goes on over on his post in the next couple of days. But don't quote me on that. There's some discussion about some gratitude for some of the fun comments that go on in there. We got Tony Gazoo. Okay, 98 entries. Good luck, everybody. $13 rounds. Okay. Dane, I hope you're enjoying that book. Joshua, Adam, Brandon, Adam. I'll give you guys a neat little trick if you're ever in a situation like the symposium again, especially if you're newer to the business. Take a look at some of the names that are in the list. When you see guys like Tony Lasher, John Pencil, Brad Turkarn, when you see these guys in a lineup, that's a sign. These guys know what works, what doesn't. They know what's reliable. They won't throw trash baits. So when you see them in line, that's a little kick in the pants to say, you should really think this one through. Maybe you need to be in there as well. Greg Jones, congratulations, Greg, and Keith Francois, Brian J. Klein. There's another guy, Brian J. Klein, Fish of Legend, collection of lures, the likes I would travel 11 hours to go see. I've talked to him about doing that, and I just might. I think Gazoo ended up with 31. We had some problem numbering and some technological issues. So it should be mostly fixed now. We may have to change one picture. Unfortunate for Gazoo, he started trying to send me pictures right about the time that I was in the worst crunch of this whole planning and organization and stuff like that. So I'm sorry, Gazoo, if I didn't give you as fair time as you deserved. But I hope the people who make the purchases enjoy and do a good job. I think we're going to pause there for today. Depending what time Brent finishes, maybe we could try and knock off one or two more. But I think I'll give Brent a chance to get on to this sooner than later. You may or may not be familiar with Brent Bochek for a variety of reasons. First of all, the man dedicates time to the musky community like very few others. He enjoys speaking. He's incredible at it. And for that reason, he gets pulled in every direction. At the 2019 Odyssey, he did a fantastic Muskies 101 seminar. I'm not sure if you can find it online or not, but very detail-oriented without wasting your time, and a lot of important things that can help shorten your learning curve if you're new to the sport. We went with the philosophy that the people at the symposium likely are not new. I'm sure some of you are. Don't be offended otherwise. So what we talked about doing is having Brent do something a little more advanced. So he's doing a presentation on making every cast count. And he's going to show you some skills and tricks that will help turn follows and opportunities into actual catches. Brent is also a guide, a full-time guide. He guides both in the Kawarthas and for salmon on Lake Ontario. His guide service is called Fish NV. You can also see him on TV. He's Setting the Hook with, I think it's just called Setting the Hook is the TV show. He also has a YouTube channel, Setting the Hook with Brent Bochek. What you could do as a symbol of good faith for the services that Brent gives, i.e. speaking for free all the time for Muskies Canada events and doing the symposium for us as well. You can go to YouTube and follow Brent. He has a long list of fantastic sponsors. He may tell you them, and he deserves those sponsors, but the sponsors like to know that the world is seeing their stuff. So if you could go and do a small favor, go over to YouTube sometime in the very near future. Check out his videos, educational, entertaining, and a great way to pass a Saturday morning when you can't go fishing. And give his page a follow and a like, and that'll go a long way to helping him. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Brent onto the screen and give him a chance to speak to you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thank you very much for the introduction there, Danny. Really appreciate it. I think we're like 30 some odd days till muskie season opens, maybe 37, 38 days or so. So
who's counting?
Exciting. The countdown's on. I know I've been doing a bit of countdown on my own Facebook page, and I haven't done it in a few days, so I'd have to go and check to see exactly where we are, where we're at with it. But I just want to say, it's you guys are doing a fantastic job here. It sucks that we couldn't have a real Odyssey this year or a symposium in person. And it's really I know people really appreciate what you guys are doing here. You're doing a fantastic job raising money for research for muskie fishing, which we're all here because we love muskie fishing and muskies, right? So we all love catching them, and the only way we can catch them is if we have a sustainable resource that with reproduction and everything else. And research is a big thing that goes into that. So hats off to you guys. Appreciate what you're doing for it. So I guess we got 35 days till the Kawartha opens. So as Dane said, my name is Brent Bochek. I guide in the Kawarthas for muskie. I do stuff on Lake Ontario for salmon and trout. I've gotten away from the bass and walleye stuff because it just gets to be too much, and I'd rather concentrate on muskie up there. And I live in the Niagara region, right in between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and we have the Niagara River, which is right half an hour, 40 minutes to the east of me here. So even though I'm not up in the North Country or where there's a lot of smaller bodies of water, we have some great fishing right in the Niagara region here. But first of all, we're going to talk about making every cast count, and also we're going to talk about some spring tactics, what it takes to put fish in the boat in the springtime. A lot of people always think fall is a big fish time, but those 50-inch fish, fish that are 50 inches in the fall, are still 50 inches in the spring too. So we have a great fishery in the spring as well. Everybody wants to get out when muskie first opens. Let's make the most of it. So let's bring up the slideshow there, Lisa, if you could, please. So as I said, we're talking early season muskie locations and making every cast count. How do we make every cast count? We talk about muskies being a fish of 10,000 casts. Years ago, they used to say 100 hours to catch one muskie. If you fish 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're catching like one and a half fish every 2 weeks. Fortunately, it's a lot different nowadays. Fortunately, we have our electronics, we have seminars, we have magazines that we read, the internet, all kinds of information out there that have made us all better fishermen. So how do we make every cast count? One of the things we have to do is make sure our hooks are sharp. There's absolutely no excuse to go out in the water and not have sharp hooks. It's one of the easiest things we can do. This blacktail here, or these blades, there's one treble hook on it. It only takes a couple minutes to take a file and sharpen that up, sharpen your hooks up. It only takes a couple minutes. Even if it's on a bait like a suet, there's 3 treble hooks on there. Spend your time in the winter sharpening these hooks up. When it comes time to be on the water, you just got to touch them up every now and then. But make sure all your hooks are sharp before you even hit the water. If you got to take a minute or two when you're on the water to sharpen them, make sure you sharpen it, because when you do have that fish hit, you want to make sure that cast counts. You want to be able to put that fish in the boat. Give yourself every opportunity to land that fish. One other thing we're going to go over is body positioning. Body positioning is huge. I have a couple of videos here where, and I'll get into them in a little more detail, but it shows you how important body positioning is when you're casting, when you're setting the hook, and it can be the difference between landing a fish and going home with a skunk. I know a few years back, I was fishing up in the French River and had a nice fish hit on the Sunday. Got it to the boat. I lost the fish close right by my feet. Just it wasn't ready to be netted yet, but it was right there. And the problem was I didn't get a good hook set because of my body positioning, the way I was working the bait. My own fault. The fish did everything it could. It hit the bait. I put the bait where the fish was. Body positioning didn't allow me a good hook set. Paying attention and accurate casting. Being prepared. These are all things we have to do, which we'll get into a little bit more as well. You got to start strong and finish strong. Finish stronger. So let's move on here. Why do we need sharp hooks and solid hook sets? This is a really small fish here, but I was able to slow the video down, and you're going to see this fish come out of the water and shake his head about 4 or 5 times, and just the veracity that he does it with and the speed. If you don't get a solid hook set and sharp hooks, you're not going to land this fish. So let me just, I have a monitor behind me here, so if I look behind me, just excuse me for a second. So just watch how many times this fish comes out and shakes his head violently, trying to throw that surface. It's a Weagle surface bait he's got in his mouth there. Because as you can see, the way he goes back and forth, nope, there we go. The way he goes back and forth with his head like that, we have to have sharp hooks, solid hook sets, line with no stretch. That's going to help you make that cast count. And then body positioning as well. One of the big things with body positioning is, if I can just put me back on the screen for a sec, Lisa. Whenever I'm working a bait, I want to be coming across the front of my body. I have the rod in my left hand. I roll with my right hand. I'm always bringing my rod across. If I'm working a jerkbait, across the front of my body like this. If I'm working blades, I'm still on an angle where I can come back and set the hook this way. Crankbaits, anything. I want to make sure that I'm able to come across from left to right when I'm working a bait when I go to set the hook. So let's just take a look at this next little video. There's a few things, before we do that actually, there's a few things with body positioning. It's important when you work at a bait, you also want to be comfortable. When you're casting your bait, you want your body to be in a position where you're comfortable. I don't like being right on the edge of the boat. I like being a step or two back. It's a little safer that way. Speaking of that, if I'm fishing by myself, quite often I'll be in the back of the boat where you're not getting thrown around by the electric motor. You can be, you're a little more stable back there. But, oops, there we go. So I make a cast out here and we're reeling, and you'll notice my body positioning, I'm able to set the hook. If we, oops, there we go. Oh, there we go. I'm like, okay, if we go back a little bit here, see where my rod tip is there? And watch it after when I set the hook, watch where my body ends up. Oops. Watch where my body ends up. So you can see me turning there, and you can see how far the rod tip actually travels. So the rod tip's out in front of me. The rod tip probably traveled 10 feet or more. And my body turns. I'm able to step back with that low stretch line, sharp hooks, a good heavy action rod. You're able to really bury those hooks. So we go on to our next one here. Oh, it's getting late and getting tired and get a little bit lazy. Now you'll see, you can drop that off for a sec, Lisa. You'll notice in that video there, my rod tip hardly moved at all. It maybe moved a couple feet. I'm setting the hook on my backhand, and I have nowhere to go with it. Across the front of your body, I've got all that room to turn, just take a step back, and set the hook. On the backhand, I have nowhere to go with it. Fortunately, we did land that fish, but on that other hook set, on the video before this, we actually had to cut the fish out of the hook, or the hooks out of the fish. The hooks actually penetrated right through, easier to cut the hooks to get the hooks out. Then on this one here, we ended up with one hook in it. We might have had more hooks than that when it first bit the bait, but when it got to the side of the boat, we landed it. It had one hook in it, and we were able to get it out very easily with pliers. But not having proper body positioning, I just didn't have the power and the leverage and the room to set that hook really good. So another thing we got to really pay attention to is the first 10 feet, first 10 feet and the last 10 feet of a cast. And of course, any time in between, we got to start strong and finish stronger. So in the first 10 feet of a cast, a bait hits, you're casting a bait, especially if it's something like blades, it hits the water. If it just flutters down, it's going to look very unnatural to a fish. You want to make sure you stop the bait before it hits the water and engage your reel. As soon as those blades hit the water, you want them spinning. If it's a jerk bait, it's going to hit the water. I don't want to have it hit the water and get a pull right away. Musky are very curious. If a bait hits the water and that fish is close by, he's going to take a look. It's human nature. We hear a bump or a bang or whatever. You hear a thump in your house, you're going to take a look, see what it is. You hear a noise outside, you're going to go take a look. Musky are the same way. They're going to take a look when they hear something splash in the water. If your bait falls through the water column unnaturally while you engage your spool and then start reeling, the fish is going to turn away. You know something's going to be wrong. You want to make sure you get those blades rolling right away. And then, so if we go to this next little video, it kind of shows you why. You can see, oops. On this here, I said I cast out, I stopped the bait, and the second pump, there's a fish on it. Oops. Where are we going here? Oh, sorry. There we go. So one pump, two pumps, boom, fish on. Nice. If I would have let that hit the water without engaging my spool or having my spool engaged and get that fish rolling right away, or my bait rolling right away, that fish, obviously I cast right close to that fish. I would not have caught that fish. We would have missed that fish. It would have been a wasted cast. We wouldn't have made that cast count. Once again, on this video here, you see my body positioning. I'm able to turn, set the hook, get pressure on that fish right away. And on this fish also, I believe we actually had to cut the hooks out as well. So, and there's another quick little point when we're talking about, we're talking muskies, we're talking research and that. It's a lot better to cut hooks out of a fish than it is to start ripping and with pliers and all that if the hooks are in deep. Make sure you get in there, get a quick, safe release. But that's a seminar for another day. We're talking about finishing strong as well. This is a video, I've played this video many times before. You're going to see in this video, it breaks things down quite a bit. When I'm casting out, I'm not putting a lot of effort into it. I'm letting the rod do the work, letting the bait load the rod up, firing it out, stopping the bait before it hits the water, get it moving right away. And another thing, you're talking about finishing strong. That means we got to be looking in the water and paying attention the whole time. I always tell people on my boat to look a foot below the bait and a foot behind the bait. You're still going to see your bait. You're going to see your bait coming in, but I'm trying to tell people to watch what's coming in behind it. So you notice as we go through this video, you'll notice how I react when the fish comes in. The fish grabs, I make a turn at the boat, the fish grabs it. And one of the really important things is I set the hook, but I keep the fish moving the whole time. My net's behind me. I got to bring the fish forward, turn it around, go to the back of the boat with it so I can grab my net, turn the fish, bring it around again, and then turn it so I can net it. The important thing there is to make sure when you get a fish hit at boat side, whether your net's ready or not, or if you're fishing by yourself or with a partner, keep that fish moving forward the whole time. You have to keep pressure on that fish. I've had people on my boat before where they've caught a fish boat side and instead of keeping that fish moving forward, they've kind of stopped and waiting for the net. You can't wait for the net. You got to keep pressure on that fish the whole time. Let's just take a quick look at this, and we'll just watch everything transpire. See, I'm watching below the bait. I'm watching in the water. Oh, I notice a fish make a move. Okay, you'll notice there when the I got the fish in. Actually, one thing you want to make sure you do, it doesn't matter if you're fishing by yourself or with somebody else, make sure your net is in a position where you can get a hold of it, and that it's not, when you pick it up, it's not going to be tangled in all kinds of hooks and other rods and that. I like to keep mine at the side of the boat. I know, fishing with John Anderson back in the fall, he keeps his right in the middle of the boat. You can see it on that slide there. It's right in the middle there, sticking up. Wherever you're comfortable with it, but make sure it's not tangled in anything else so that when you do go to use it, you're not going to lose a big fish at the side of the boat because your net's not ready. Another thing is I always keep, I usually have rod holders on my boat. I do a little bit of trolling. I'm mostly a caster, but I keep those rod holders on there, not for trolling all the time, but for putting the net in. Once the net's at the side of the boat, I'm able to use my net as a big live well. The fish is in the net. It gets a chance to chill, relax. And I put the net in the rod holder. Nobody has to hold on to it. The fish isn't going anywhere. I'm not going to lose my net that way. And even after I bring the fish out, I don't have to worry about the net because it's still in the rod holder. I don't have to worry about it falling in the water and drifting, floating away or sinking or anything like that. When it comes to rods, we spend a lot of money on rods. There's so many different kinds of musky rods out there with different actions on them. I like throwing a rod that's about 8'6" for most of my casting. I know nowadays we're getting rods over 9 feet long. When I first started musky fishing, my first rod was a Fenwick, and it was 5'9". I used that rod for jerk baits. I used it for blades. I used it for everything. I didn't know any different at the time, but it was a great jerk bait rod. Not as good for throwing blades and stuff. Couldn't cast that far with it. But over the years, the trends of rods have gotten longer. This rod here I'm using is an 8'6" Abu Garcia Veritas. It's an extra heavy. And the baits you're using really have to be matched up to your rod. Or pardon me, your rod needs to be matched up to the bait you're throwing. You can see John there in the front of the boat. You can see the suic on his bait, on his rod there. You can see a bit of action in his rod. He did when I show this video, you'll see him fling that out. He's not putting a lot of effort into it. He's letting the rod do the work. You're going to see me cast in slow motion here. I come back a little bit, almost throwing it like a lacrosse ball. And as I go forward, the rod's loading up. And if the rod is the right action for the weight of the bait you're throwing, your bait's not going to flip in the air as it's going through. It's going to fly fairly straight. You're going to be able to stop it before it hits the water and engage it right away as soon as it hits the water. You're going to be able to make that cast count. If you're casting out and you're casting over where there's a fish, and your bait's flipping, going head over heels, doing a somersault, and tangles up, you're not making that cast count. There's no chance of catching that fish. So let's just take a quick little watch here. You done not a lot of effort, made a nice long cast there. I don't bring it back very far there, just a little bit. Let the weight of the lure load the rod up, and let the rod do a lot of the work in your cast. Because that's a 14-inch Franken suic I'm throwing there. And as soon as it hits the water, start retrieving it. So it's really important to make sure that the rods you're using are matched up to the weight of your bait. I have probably 2 rods in particular that I use when I'm fishing, musky fishing. One I'm throwing big rubbers with and throwing jerk baits with. The other one I'm throwing blades with. The one I'm throwing blades with is a little bit lighter action. I think it's a heavy, as opposed to the extra heavy that I'm throwing jerk baits with and big rubbers. So it just gives me a little bit more play on that rod, a little bit more action when I'm throwing the bait out. If I'm using a little bit lighter rod, when I'm trying to throw those heavier baits, they're not going to cast as far because the rod doesn't have enough energy to throw those heavier baits. And if I'm using throwing blades on a rod that's too heavy, it's not going to load up enough to use the energy that's in that rod. Another thing when you're making every cast count, you want to make sure that if your partner hooks a fish, you do everything in your power to make sure you net that fish for him. We're talking about making those last 10 feet count, boat side strikes. This fish, we didn't get the fish hitting on camera here, but John was actually looking at me talking, and muscle memory, as he does every single cast, he makes a boat side maneuver, and he had a fish come up and grab his bait right at his feet as he's making a blind boat side maneuver. As he fought the fish, took it around one side of the boat and brought it right back around to the motor, I was able to net it. But you'll notice in the video, I've got it slowed down, where I go to net the fish, and the fish starts shaking its head. I pull the net back. I go to net it again. The fish starts shaking its head again. A couple of things. You want to make sure you have the bag of the net in your hand. I don't like leaving that bag of the net hanging when I go to net a fish. I want to have that bag of the net in my hand, and as I go down to net the fish, I can release it when I'm ready to net it. You'll notice here I pull back a couple times, as I was saying, because the last thing you want to do when your partner's fighting a fish is get those hooks tangled up in the net or screw up a net job. You get right both sides there, John? One yeah. Nice fish.
You're going around the other side, right?
Big old net here ready. So you can see there I got my net or the net of the netting of the net in my hand. Go down up. Oh, fish starts flopping there. Pull back. Pull back again because the fish just wasn't quite ready. John gets his head up and then try to get it right in the center of the net. Nicely done, sir. All right. Okay, as you can see there, I pulled the net back twice as that fish started shaking its head and trying to dive down again. So I was saying the last thing you want to do is get those hooks caught in the net on your partner when he's trying to land a fish. So just kind of be aware of that. I learned that trick salmon fishing years ago to hold on to the net handle. Hold on to the netting of the net as you go to net a fish. As soon as you're ready to net him, you can drop that netting and let the fish hit the bottom of your net. One thing when you have your fish in the net, don't be going and lifting them up on the fish. Keep it in the water. I use the rod holders. John puts his netting onto a cleat there so he doesn't lose his net. Take the hooks out in the water. Only have the fish out for a couple seconds for a picture and then get them right back in. Weed flats and points. We're talking places between spawning grounds, summer rain. Did I go past one here? Oh, there we go. Sorry. So we're in what? Tomorrow's the 1st of May. Muskies are probably spawning right now up in the Kawartha Lakes. I haven't been up there to check the water temperatures, but they're probably going to be anywhere between 45 and 50 degrees anyways. So muskies will spawn when the water gets between 50 and 55 degrees. I always thought it was about 55 degrees. The other day I heard Dr. Sean Lansman talk about it being 50 degrees. I believe what Sean says, so I've changed my presentation here to say 50 to 55 degrees. And they're going to be done when it hits around 60 degrees. They're going to be spawning in shallow, weedy bays, sometimes in rivers as well. I'm thinking about the Kawarthas in particular, so I'm talking about lakes. They will go up the creeks to spawn and some of the rivers that run into the Kawartha Lakes. So one thing you got to remember, muskies are broadcast spawners. They don't protect their eggs. They're not like a bass where they're going to make a nest and protect them. They're going to go in there, they're going to lay their eggs, and then they're going to leave. The males are going to be the first to the spawning grounds, and they're going to be last to leave. Kind of like a 19-year-old going to the bar. He's the first one there in the evening. He's the last one to leave at night. So that's kind of something you can think of also when you're musky fishing in the springtime, when the season first opens. The males are going to recover a little quicker than the females. They're going to be active a little quicker. So if you're getting a lot of smaller fish in the spring, they're more than likely males. Once they do spawn, the males are going to be active a lot quicker. They're going to be on the feed a lot quicker. The females will still feed, but they're probably going to be dropping off a little bit, dropping off those weed edges, maybe a little bit of deeper water to recuperate, which doesn't mean they can't be caught. You just have to take a little bit different approach. You can be casting into the weeds on one side and then out into deeper water on the other side of the boat. And you might be catching a male fish on the inside, and on the outside you could catch a female fish, which possibly be a little bigger. So in the springtime, what I'm looking for, I'm going to be looking for weed flats and points. I love fishing points, windswept points, rocky points, places in between spawning grounds in their summer range. If you can figure out where the fish are spawning and you think you know where they are in the summertime, in June, especially those first 2 weeks, there's a good chance you can interrupt those fish between the spawning grounds and where they're going to be for the summertime. One thing I really like fishing is over top of weed beds. There's a lot of places that'll fish in the springtime that in the summertime, the weeds are up to the top 8 feet of water. But in June, quite often, they're maybe 3 or 4 feet. So you have lots of water over top of those weeds. The nice thing about those spots is if there's not a lot of weed growth yet, a lot of the fish in the system are going to be using those for cover. The weeds provide cover. They provide for smaller fish. They provide ambush points for bigger fish. So the first stop after spawning and travel routes. So if we look up at the very top there on the right side, for example, I know muskie spawn up in there. And there's also on the right side, there's a little bit of an inlet there, a tiny little bay. I know they spawn in there as well. These are also places where we catch crappie and bluegill in the spring. And I've seen muskie in there as well. Sometimes I think they're just kind of cruising in there. You get maybe they're in there feeding a little bit. But they're not going to be in there. And if I can just get my pointer here. Get a laser pen going. I don't know if you can see the red dot there or not on the screen. So I'm talking about this little bay here and the bay up at the top here. So if a muskie's in there and he lives out in the main part of the lake in the summertime, he's going to be following these routes. There's a weed bed here, right along here. There's a point there. He comes along another weed bed. He's more than likely going to follow the edge of those weeds as he slowly makes his way to his summer range. I kind of look at it think like a deer. If you ever watch deer out in the field, they don't come from out of the weed bed, out of the bush and walk straight across the middle of a field usually. The odd time they will, if they're traveling, they'll either be in the bush or they'll be on the edge of the bush. You don't see deer out in the very middle of a field unless they've taken their time to get out there, usually under the cover of darkness. So I don't think a muskie is going to come out, leave his spawning ground, and just make a beeline right across the middle of a lake to get back to his summer range. So these are places where we can stop and we can fish. We got a big right up here on the top, just outside of that bay. We got a weed bed. In June, quite often it's only halfway up, maybe 3 or 4 feet. It's not all the way up to the top. You'll have fish stop there. And if there's going to be resident fish there that are going to live there all year long, and there's also fish that are going to stop there in the spring just to kind of recuperate. It's a first stop after the spawning area. And they're going to be in there to feed, especially those male fish. The females might be dropped off a little bit. These are great places to troll as well. I'll do a lot of casting, but these are also great places to troll. As we come out where it says submerged cable, I know that I just know from experience that it's a rocky point there, comes off with big boulders, drops off to deep water, and then back inside it's nice and shallow and there's weeds. Always lots of panfish around. So it's a great spot for a bigger fish to stop. They can be out in the deep water if they want. They can come right into that shallow water to feed if they want. So you can just put me up on the screen for a second, Lisa. One of the things you're talking about, those fish being suspended over deeper water, they're not active fish. If there's a big female out there she's not active. She's out there just kind of chilling. That's the time I'll throw a jerk bait out there. Something like a silk, where I can give it and I'll work it slowly. I can give it a pull. I let it suspend for a couple seconds, give it another pull, let it suspend. I'll work a bait slower out there. Sometimes we use big rubber baits. This is about a 9-inch curly Sue. I'll throw that out there. And I like working with big rubber baits like a jerk bait. This is a time I'll cast it out and just a real slow, steady retrieve, let that tail do the work. Muskies are opportunistic. They might not be in the mood to feed out there. There might be a little bit of a negative mood. But if they get a chance to eat something that's going by them, they don't know when their next meal is coming. You got a chance of catching that fish. I've caught a lot of fish in the early season, where we've had some people are casting into the weed bed and some people are casting out into the deeper edge. And it's the deeper edge that always produces the bigger fish for us if they're casting away from the weed edge. So we'll go on to the next slide there. So during the early season, fish can be spread all over an entire weed bed or flat using emerging weeds as cover. It's important to cover the whole area, that these spots can hold multiple fish. So this weed bed here just happens to be, it comes quite a ways out from the edge of the lake. And if I can get, oops, I want to put a highlighter on here. Yeah, there we go. So what I'll do on a weed bed like this is, I'll cast it because I'm primarily a caster. But if I have people on my boat and it's coming on, they're hungry or they're getting tired, what I'll do is I'll troll across this weed bed. And I'll start out here in the deep water. I'll come across the weed bed into this deep water. I'll make a turn out of the deep water, back across it. And I'll just keep doing this. And the reason I'm using the highlighter here is because this is what my GPS will look like. I'm going to use my GPS to leave a trail. I'll cover the whole thing and make sure I always come out over the deeper water just in case there's a fish out there. And it's kind of a surprise fish. We don't get a lot of fish over that deeper water, but when we do, it's usually a bigger fish. We'll just keep trolling like this. And then after we do that, then I'm going to troll the edges. I'm going to go up. I'm going to come back this way. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to fish the whole thing. After I do it, my GPS is going to look like this. If I'm going to hit that weed bed later in the day, I'll change the color on my GPS to a different color. If I have red on there in the morning, if I fish it later in the day, I might go with green, just so that I can see where I'm covering what water I'm covering when I'm on there. What this is ensuring that I'm doing is I'm going to cover the whole weed bed. I'm not missing spots on it. I'm going to cover the whole thing. And this is another spot where you have emerging weeds where, as I said earlier, sometimes they might be 8 feet tall in the summertime. Right now in June, they're like 3 or 4 feet. And you can get multiple fish off these. It's one of those spots where you have resident fish all summer long, which are really keying in on the edges. But in the spring, you have resident fish that make their way there. Then you have fish that are also stopping there on their way to their summer range. So, windswept points. I love fishing windswept points. It's something in the Kawartha Lakes I don't see a lot of guys doing for some reason. I'm not saying guys don't fish these windswept points, but I've caught a lot of really nice fish off windswept points. It might only be in 3 feet of water, anywhere from 8 to 3 feet of water. Well, what happens when muskies love current? Wind creates current. You don't notice a lot of current in the Kawartha Lakes. So when you have islands and points and you have wind pushing through them or around them, that's creating current. What happens on those points is things get turned up. You got crayfish on there, they get all stirred up. And what happens then? Smallmouth come in to feed on them, rock bass come in to feed on them, other panfish will come in to feed on them, and then the muskies come in to feed on those. Muskies become active in that wind when you get that water churning up in there. Sometimes you got to, if I have people in the boat, I'll make sure that I have them in a certain position and I'm controlling the boat so that they can maximize their cast. Sometimes you're getting pushed in right in there. So you got to, boat control is very important. Some of these rocky points you're fishing, you got to make sure you don't run your boat onto them. You don't want the people casting right up in, into the rocks. Well, you do want them casting into the rocks, but you have to make sure that you have the right baits so you're not going to get snagged in there. Around these rocky points, I like throwing jerk baits. It's one of my favorite things to do in there. It just seems they're in that wind, the baits are able just to hang in there for a couple seconds longer. The fish are in there, they're active, they're feeding. So I'll throw blades up in there as well. One of my favorite blades to throw is a Handlebars double 10 with the, it's a brown perch color. So it's got a bit of orange on it, a bit of chartreuse, a yellow, and some browns on it. It just seems to be a great color in the Kawartha Lakes. But if you're not fishing windswept points, especially early in the season, you're missing out on a really good bite. Another thing about these windswept points, I haven't caught a lot of small fish on them. They've all, for the most part, have been bigger fish. We used to have a trailer up in the Kawarthas, and another fellow in our trailer park came up to me the one day, and he goes, and he fishes muskies quite a bit. He likes to use a troller, and he trolls a lot of jerk baits as well, and he's quite successful. But he says to me, he goes, I see you up on that point there. Do you ever get any fish up on there? I go, I get the odd one, kind of being coy about it. He goes, yeah, but they're always small, eh? And I said, yeah. But to be honest about it, I don't think I've caught a small fish. There's 2 points I'm thinking in particular that I'll fish, and I don't think I've got a small fish on them yet. So those windswept points produce a lot of bigger fish for the Kawarthas. Short line trolling gives you the ability to cover water looking for active fish. 15 to 50 feet of line is all I'll ever use. I'll do a bit of trolling in the fall and some in the springtime. Excuse me. When I'm talking short line trolling, like if we go back to look at that slide I had where I was highlighting it, what I'll be doing is this is a rod day spinnerbait. I'll be trolling stuff like this over it. It's got the 2 blades on it. It's got 3 single hooks on it. I found a very good hooking percentage. I'll troll something like this double 10 on there as well. They just seem to throw off a lot of vibration. You got your motor going, that's throwing off vibration into the water. I had a very interesting discussion with John Anderson back in the fall about how muskies, John was saying how muskies actually learn to use the boat to hunt. You know, when you're going through weeds and all that kind of stuff when you're trolling, it's stirring stuff up. Sometimes bait fish are getting disorientated. You know, a muskie picks up on that. You got a bait 15 feet behind your boat, 50 feet behind your boat. There's a good chance you can catch that fish if he's coming in to see what's going on. And I found with these, throwing blades back there, you can also run real shallow crankbaits. But I find putting blades behind there like these, I've caught a lot of fish on it, and I've caught some really nice fish for people on them. One of my favorite fish we've caught doing that is I had a guide trip a few years back. The gentleman hadn't caught a muskie. He was in his early 60s, hadn't caught a muskie since he was either 14 or 16. He couldn't quite remember. And we were working a weed bed, and he goes, oh, I'm going to stop and have some lunch. I said, just hold on 5 minutes. I got 2 trolling rods out. We started fishing. As soon as I got the rods out, they started eating lunch. I put 2 rods out. We're trolling. And I think he had like 1 bite left of his sandwich, and he had about a 44, 45-inch tiger muskie. Just crushed one of these Rob Day spinner baits. And we talk about making every cast count. Whenever you're on the water muskie fishing, you want to do everything you can to ensure that you catch a fish that day. If you're going to stop for lunch, you might as well troll. Make sure you got baits in the water all the time. As I said, we used to talk about muskies being a fish of 10,000 casts or 100 hours. Well, you know what? If you're going to be on the water for 10 hours in a day, make sure you got your baits in the water for 9 hours and 59 minutes of it. Opening weekend. So that fish, just go back to this one for a second. That was a 48-inch female, second week of muskie season. And it was about 500 yards from a spawning area, from a known spawning area. Whether that fish spawned in that area or not, I don't know that. But it was close to a spawning area. And it was on a route where I figured it was a route where muskies are going back to their home range, for their summer home range. Here's another opening weekend fish. This one was caught casting. Actually, it was caught on, that was caught on 8s, but still on the handlebars brown perch. 8 foot flat with emerging weed growth. Now, that could have been a resident fish on that weed bed, or it could have been a transient fish, which was on its way from its spawning area to its summer home range. These are a couple males that were caught in early June, close, and they're also close to potential spawning areas. They're fairly decent males, but taking a look at them when we had them in the net, I know they were males. So on the picture on the left, you can see there's weeds right in behind there. That whole bay could be a possible spawning area. And in front of the picture on the right, if we go back in that way, that's also a potential spawning area for muskies. A little bit of a creek coming in there and some shallow weeds. Does anybody have any questions? I think we can go to some questions here, Lisa, if you want. Okay. Lisa, are you hi, Randy Nutter. Hi from Missouri. Hey, Randy. So, are you using weighted or am I using weighted Frankensuic? Yes, I do use weighted Frankensuics. So the nice thing about the Frankensuics is we can get rid of that slide there, Lisa. You want to get rid of the sides, Lisa? There we go. So the nice thing about these Frankensuics is, if you can see there, it's got a weight here and it has a weight there. They're actually interchangeable. I like them weighted. I like to get them down in the water column a little bit more. Yeah, you can get heavy. You can put heavier weights on them as well. And you can experiment with those weights. The more weight you have on them, the more neutral buoyant you can make them. So when you give them a pull, they won't raise up as fast. I don't find the weight gets them down as much when I'm working it. It's all about the rise. So when you got the weight on those suics, whether it's a weighted Frankensuic or a 9-inch thriller like this one here, you can see the difference between the 9 and the 14-inch suic there. That weight, when they're weighted, when they rise really slow, when they're almost just kind of sitting there, that's when a fish is going to hit it. They don't hit it so much when you're pulling it. It's more so when it stops and then it starts to rise a little bit, or when it becomes a little bit neutral buoyant. And there's a few things you can do to make them neutral buoyant. You can add more weight to them. Also, sometimes I'll take a rubber core sinker and I'll put that in right in front of my leader. So I'll give it a jerk. It'll go down. It'll raise up about 9 inches to the length of the leader. Then it'll just kind of hang there. In the summertime, when you got high skies and high pressure systems coming through, that can be a real trigger. It's also a great time to do a trick like that during cold fronts in the summer or in the fall as well. Fluorocarbon or steel leaders? I use both. That's a good question, Steve. You know what? You can do a whole seminar just on leaders. When I first, I use a lot of steel leaders when I'm musky fishing. I also use fluorocarbon. They both work great. I know some guys will use fluorocarbon for everything. They'll use it for jerk baits and for blades or crankbaits. I think using a steel leader with just a snap swivel or with just a snap on the front, what will happen is it actually gives you a little bit more movement on your jerk baits. So when I'm throwing jerk baits, I do like a steel leader. Fluorocarbon I'll use more so when I'm throwing blades, but you can go with either one. I like a solid leader for jerk baits, where if I'm throwing blades with a steel leader, it's going to be a 7-strand. Do I find bait size makes a difference in June in the Kawarthas? Years ago, people used to talk about, that's a really good question, Brian. Thank you. I used to always throw smaller baits in the spring. You know, this would be a big bait, a 9-inch suic, for example, would be a big bait, and I'd throw number 8 when it came to blades in the spring. Last year, I started throwing the Frankensuics, like the 14-inch baits, and I'll throw big grandmas in the spring as well. What really turned me on to using bigger baits in the spring was, years ago, we're up walleye fishing in May, and I forgot my net. We were catching all kinds of walleye using a jig and minnow. Not a big deal, because you use a single hook, you can flip a lot of them into the boat. My wife's got about a 14-inch walleye on. It's at the side of the boat. I go to grab it, and about a 40-inch muskie comes up and tries to grab the walleye at the same time. After I maybe swore a couple times, counted my fingers, made sure they're all there, it got me thinking. I'm not thinking about walleye anymore. I'm thinking about this muskie that tried to eat a 14-inch walleye. If a muskie's going to try to eat a 14-inch walleye in May, he's not going to have troubles eating a 14-inch bait in June. I just think it throws off a bigger profile, a little easier for them to see even. It's going to displace a little bit more water. I have no problem throwing bigger baits in May, or pardon me, in June for muskie. Okay. Any more questions there? Or? Okay. Okay. Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and Danny, I want to thank you for having me on your show tonight. Really appreciate it.
Don't thank me, Brent. It's I that should be thanking you. I like I mentioned at the beginning, you give so much of your time, and I'm grateful for it. And I really think you did a great job at the presentation here. I love the way you break down the different sections of the water and the types of water. I really think anybody watching today should have seen a couple different approaches that they can try, even if you're doing, let's say your thing happens to be working those windswept points, then there's trolling the reefs as a different alternative. And it really highlights to everybody that you can't be one-dimensional when you're out there, regardless of the time of the year or what your expectations are. I think you did an awesome job showing us, Brent, how we can approach those different sections of water at that same time in early spring. So thanks for the education. Thanks for giving us a lead foot in the spring here. And I'm really, really, really hoping that at least a handful of people catch a fish and they can say, you know what, Brent Bochek put me in that right spot, or gave me that right idea, or led me in that right way. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to follow Brent at his YouTube channel. And if you're looking for a guide up in the Kawarthas, Envy
Fish Envy.
Fish Envy, sorry. Appreciate it. And with that, I think I'll wish you a good night. And thanks again, Brent. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Okay, we're back at it. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm ready to go fishing. When this is done, I think it's going to be time to go to the boat, start loading up. What did he say? There's 40 some odd days, 35 days left, and might be time to get ready, I think. Getting excited. All right, I've been planning to run the show till closer to 9 o'clock. If there's no objections, I think we'll do a few more draws here, and see if we can get some baits being picked here. Remember, guys, we got to be patient here. Not everybody's off. There are essential workers. We have doctors, nurses, police officers. We have people in the forces who are serving overseas who want to support us and participate. I've set a very loose timeline of 4 hours to pick. Obviously, if it goes overnight, it goes overnight. Please make a real full-hearted effort to try to make your picks and be cognizant of where we are with different draws. I know it's going to be hard, but we will have a team tagging you, sending you messages, PMs, things like that to get it going. But if we need to wait, we need to wait because we have 35 days. So let's not be too hasty or anything along those lines. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm doing my very best to get to people even as we're talking during these presentations. So reach out to me on Messenger. I'll be up for a few more hours, for better or worse, and I will try to get back to you. I think it's time to do a couple more draws before we call it a night. So I'm going to head over to the bingo roller here, and let's see who's next. All right, number 26. Number 26 is Lebowski Lures. All right, I'm going to go ahead. You guys are going to have to be a little more patient with me. We ran into a technical problem, and somebody's presence within the group was removed. I happened to be aware that they were in and then out. So I'm just going to make sure, if I need to, I'm going to add them to the list as we go. He does not need to be in the Lebowski one, so we're good to go. Next. And there we go. Sorry. Copy. So Lebowski Lures, love. Johnny LeBear is another one of those real solid people on this planet. It's always good to support guys family man, fellow fisherman. Really cool fact about his baits. He has a style and a system for running these spinner baits. He fishes his own stuff, obviously. And I think in the last 3 years, the opening weekend tournament, he's finished first, third, and second, all, again, using his baits. Johnny the Bear is definitely someone to talk to if you need to know about power trolling and things like that. So we get 213 entries here. Lebowski lures, of course, is spelled wrong. But what do you expect from me? It's still spelled wrong. And here we go. Also, this fish right here, from there to there, was caught on this Lebowski lure right here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a fair and well-deserved shameless plug. So 14 rounds in this one. I'll show you after. I just realized you're staring at the randomizer. But long and short, the fish in the background is caught on a Lebowski. All right. There's a couple, there's 5 options there too for a custom build. And one of his, like, I believe it's the XXXL. He's willing to take your recommendations and build it specific for you. It'll take 4 to 6 weeks before it's produced, but I think that's an opportunity that you will not always get. And it's hard to get on the build list at times. Johnny's a really busy guy. So I think that's a really cool opportunity. Check it out. Look at his, look at that option for those who are in this lineup. All right, here we go. Carson Semino, Tyler Graham. I think, if I recall correct, we ended up with 31, but I'm not 100%. We had to post that one towards the end. So again, here's the list of people and the order they get to pick. And after we part ways in a few minutes, I will get this list posted up for you, and the picking will begin, and we'll go into tomorrow, obviously. All right, let's get back to the bingo roller. I think we're gonna have time to do 2 more, and then we'll call it a night. You ready? Here we go. Oh, one fell out. Makes it nice and easy. Number 8. Who do we have? Thirsty Baits, Frank Thurston. Another guy who went out of his way to support this show. One of the first people I talked to, and one of the first to say, yeah, let's do it. Another terrific soul. We got a lot of those in this group, but Frank's build list is like 8 months, 9 months long, and so it was really awesome that he stepped up and gave us a chance to put some Frankie baits into the show. That was not as easy as you might think. That does not. That says Frankie baits, not Thurston. Sorry, 1 second here. I apologize. At least I caught it before I did it. Okay. And where are we heading? If you're the kind of angler that hangs out on St. Clair down near the Thames River, I'll go ahead and give you a little secret. I don't have much to offer the musky world, but I have this. You run a jointed thirsty 15 feet back off of one of your boards at night, and call me the next morning and tell me how it went. That's a free tip from nobody who knows anything. Okay, there's our list. 119 entries. I think Frank ended up with 19 baits. Good luck. Here we go. 10 rounds. Okay. Round 1. Round 2. round 3, round 4. Again, if you ever want to see how you place in every single round, that information is readily available. This is a proper registered account. I'm not sure what you would want to, but I guess you have to kind of trust me. Okay, runner-up, Walzer, and the actual Peter Fisher-Pete Hoffman, busy working in the background, but he'll have to make a pause for a second to make a pick. And then Matt, Ryan, all the way through. Joe Clee coming up at the bottom there. Bob just outside if someone passes. All right. Again, Frank, thank you for participating. Thanks for your guidance at the start of this project, and thanks for getting those baits ready. Okay, I'm going to do, let's do 2 more. We can do this. I don't know if you're as tired as I am, but... All right, who's our lucky one? Number 10. More number baits. We're not doing more number baits tonight. I will do that one tomorrow. There was a problem with that list that's posted. I think I know what went wrong. I'm going to confirm it before we roll it, and Andrew, I'll make sure your name is added to that one. So, all right, what do we get? Number 24, handlebars. All right, and let me open that one up. What is going on here? Sorry. I think these computers have had enough for today too. Perfect. And let's go over here. New giveaway. New giveaway. Handlebars. Perfect. I'm looking forward to Mike Parker talking for us. Him and his family have been working feverishly trying to have baits ready, and I think it was a super cool gesture on their part to release their new bait at our show. It was an awesome symbol of appreciation. Sad, unfortunately, that it couldn't be at an in-person show, but even if you weren't on the list for some reason, go over to the handlebars post, take a look what they put up there. Something different, definitely going to move a lot of water. Of course, they never release it without testing it. It's pushing water and catching fish. I think these first baits, I think there's 31 of them, are the first ones being sold publicly after all the testing and whatnot. Just give me a quick second. I want to see. Don't see Andrew wanting to be in on handlebars. Okay, so we're good to go. I'm going to run this without adding. Sorry about that. Waste your time, guys, but we got to be fair to everybody. And if it was your stuff that somehow got deleted, you want me to give you the same amount of time. Okay, and roll dice. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Don't ask me why I count it. All right, Tyler, Douglas, Francis, Jeff. Oh. Oops. Gene, Adam, Tiffany Garber, our runner-up round, and then our actual winners. Eric Koopman, Todd Sawyer, Jamie Lucas, Ken Johnson. I won't go all the way through. I'll show you the list up to the point where I think there's 32. But looking forward to Mike talking to us tomorrow. I was really desperately trying to get people from the Lake St. Clair Telemetry Project and the ministry to come speak to us. They really wanted to, but it turns out you can't just do that here in Canada. You got to get permission and paperwork be filed and all of that, and it just didn't pan out in time. The researcher involved did an awesome job coming up with the problem solving or a solution to that problem. And Mike Parker, who was helping with the tagging and actively involved in the whole project, is going to speak to us and show us kind of that connection between the research happening and how the guides and the anglers in the area, what they take that information and learn, and increase their catch rate. The telemetry project on St. Clair is finished now, so that's why there's no financial support going that way. But very cool project with some interesting results. All right, it's 8:56. I don't want to keep anybody too late. I think we're going to stop there for the night. Thank you guys for sitting with me, putting up with me, and listening to me. There were a lot of people in the background who are making this work and working on your behalf. So let's all be kind to them, respectful. And Lisa Goodyear, you're a stellar human being. She's the one who's working the camera. And keep in mind, there's probably 5 days of work that happened before the show even got started, and she'll be at it all day again tomorrow. Thank you to the Ottawa River Musky Factory for their support, and to all the builders for putting into the project, and to you guys. Again, $27,000 is nothing to be ashamed of. I'll get you a final number, I promise. And thank you so much. Enjoy your night, and I'll see you tomorrow. 9 a.m. We're going to start with our first presenter. It'll be a quick introduction. Then they'll start pretty much just after 9. And then from 9 to 9:45 till 10, we'll do some more draws. And we'll keep working our way through, doing draws, as many draws as we can in between each of the speakers. And then when Mike finishes up at 2 o'clock, if we're not finished the draws by then, we will finish them all right there and then. And then the picking happens over the amount of time, all right? Any questions, don't hesitate. I'll do my very best to get back to you. I appreciate your patience and support. Okay, have yourself a good night.